Chapter 348. William had read Lancelot's biography before, and he believed that Lancelot was telling the truth. He was not wary of Lancelot. He was wary of the Viscount of Darkness or the dark creatures. He was afraid of the butterfly effect that would cause changes. Hence, he hid the small black snake on a dark creature with epic bloodline. He wanted to track the location of the resurrection of the Blood Moon Dark Witch. He did not expect it to be under the library. Lancelot did not have the chance to enter this underground space. The Blood Moon Dark Witch had been resurrected and became extremely powerful in a short period of time. In the end, the entire city fell into the dark world. William and his companions had to enter. They could not allow the Blood Moon Dark Witch to become stronger. Hence, William glanced at the 10 players squatting in the corner. He smiled and waved his hand amiably. "Come, be good. It's time for you to enter the battlefield." Oh. Chu Yochio was stunned. He understood Prince William's plan. Their role was to scout ahead. Chu Yochio was used to giving orders, especially since he was the captain of the International League tournament. No one would reject his orders. Chu Yochio said to the others, "We'll split into 5 groups of 2. Everyone will enter in batches. If there are any traps, try your best to survive. But if you see any obvious features, try your best to activate them." "Why activate them? Won't we die if we activate them?" After Changli Jioga said this, he shut his mouth. Their purpose was to activate some traps. Only by dying could they show the value of their lives. Some people's deaths were insignificant, while others were more valuable than gold coins and experience points. Now was the time to die. Lucky Dream, the only rich player, could not help but sigh. "I didn't expect a rich pervert like me to be a soldier in the movie." Chu Yochio chose Forever Alone because he wanted to use him as a scapegoat. Otherwise, Forever Alone would request to form a team with Xiao Aiyan, and Chu Yochio would have to poach him again. As the vanguard, the 2 of them stepped onto the stairs leading to death. They took a deep breath and walked into the black hole that led to rebirth. Then, the 4 groups of players entered the black hole. They were separated by 3 meters. Hence, William and his companions were separated by 10 meters from the players. Hence screams, exaggerated rumbles, and the sound of giant blades slicing through the air rang out continuously in front of them. Burned Cinder and the rest were filled with admiration for the prince. "Your Royal Highness is indeed your Royal Highness. We all thought that the chosen ones were too weak and were like small mermen, but you thought of such a good method. Otherwise, this road would be really difficult to walk. Some things here can cause us injuries." Diablo sighed. He touched the traps made of rare metals, and his eyes lit up. He immediately cut it off, uprooted it, and stuffed it into his spatial ring. Oh, there was also a super magical metal ball that could flatten a person. Oh, some of the barbs, well, in short, all the metals that could be used as traps here were basically magic metals, the kind that were enchanted by dark magic. But Diablo looted everything. It was clear that Diablo adhered to the good tradition of wasting in the City of Dawn. Chu Yochio and the others tried their best to use their skills to explore the path. Then, they used their hands and feet to touch all the places they could reach, activating any mechanisms that could be triggered. They just kept on dying, kept on moving forward, and showed their value to the fullest. After each of the 10 players sacrificed 2 or 3 lives, they finally completed the underground tunnel that was no more than 200 meters long. Why did William not choose to dig a tunnel here? Firstly, it was embarrassing. Secondly, he was afraid that he would enter the dark world if he continued digging. Then, it would be difficult for him to come out. After all, this underground tunnel was not the entrance to the dark world. It was just an altar used to resurrect the Blood Moon Dark Witch. Hence, Lord William could make use of the fearless players. If Lord William could use his mouth, he would not have to use his hands. When William and his companions arrived at the exit, they discovered that the players had taken off their equipment. They were wearing white clothes and pants. They looked like prisoners, squatting down and peeping into the tunnel. The commotion at the entrance was huge, but it did not attract any enemies. It was a little strange. But when William and his companions looked into the tunnel, the underground space had a radius of 10,000 meters. It was obvious that the Blood Moon believers had been well prepared for hundreds of years. There was a huge altar a few hundred meters away. Thousands of Blood Moon believers had gathered there. They were kneeling on the ground and chanting incantations that others could not understand. There were 8 pitch-black magic iron pillars around the altar. The pillars were engraved with blood-red runes. On the stone bed in the middle, there was a woman's corpse that had been pieced together. She should be the Blood Moon Dark Witch. William had good eyesight. He could see that the fragments of the corpse were constantly twisting. Oh, she was alive. Even though she was sealed, she did not die. At this moment, the severed head of the Dark Witch tilted to one side. She looked at William with a pair of blood-red eyes. William tilted his head. There were so many people here, but she did not look at them. Did she have a problem with his gaze? But at this moment, the head suddenly opened its mouth and let out an ear-piercing scream. They saw. Countless cages appeared in the dark sky. Everyone looked up and saw that it was filled with imprisoned humans. There were men, women, and children. There were tens of thousands of them. At the same time, a translucent magical barrier rose from the ground and instantly enveloped the altar and the imprisoned humans. It isolated William and the Blood Moon believers. As for the head of the Dark Witch, it had its mouth wide open. It continuously extracted the blood of the civilians in the cage's souls. It slowly turned the humans into dried corpses. This scene, to many players, it was too bloody and violent. If it was not for the distance, the timid ones would have started to scream. Even so, Lil Fatty's live broadcast was still a very unpleasant viewing experience for many of the viewers. But it was the first time they witnessed how terrifying the professionals, devils, and dark creatures who believed in the dark world were. It was also the first time they firmly believed that the arrival of the dark world would bring destruction to the beautiful God's continent. The Blood Moon believers, who were also isolated by the barrier, stood up and turned to look at the group of uninvited guests. A tall man with horns on his head and dark red skin looked at William. He said in a deep voice, "Leave. This is your last chance to live. What if we don't leave? Then you can ask, in my hand." Puffed. The tall man did not finish his sentence. William appeared in front of him and pierced his chest with his sword. He sneered and said, "You get lost." William kicked the man again. The man who had drunk the devil's blood retreated tens of meters and knocked down several people. Then he got up and covered his wound. Just as he was about to say something, his entire head exploded with a bang. William blew on his glowing fist and looked at the thousands of Blood Moon believers around him in disdain. "Damn. Kill them and protect Master until she recovers." The Blood Moon believers were enraged. They were looking down on them too much. Could it be that without the Blood Moon Dark Witch, they would not help them? But William really wanted to say something. If not for the Blood Moon Dark Witch, if not for the city falling into an alternate dimension, not only did we not care about you, but the Legion of Carinza Grand Duchy would also not care about you. After all, what did you do in the past hundreds of years? Dig a hole? Build a resurrection altar? TSK. It was a huge project that took hundreds of years. Give me 3 days, and the players of the City of Dawn will be able to complete this difficult task. If not for the legendary Devil Lord, you wouldn't even know how to activate the Blood Moon Dark Witch's magic array. William took the lead and charged into the crowd of Blood Moon believers. In just a few seconds, he had killed more than 10 professionals. Broken limbs were everywhere. Burned Cinder, Diablo, Shien, Lautner, and the others were ferocious. Even when facing thousands of Blood Moon believers, they were fearless. They used their ultimate skills: fire giants, metal torrents, and holy light angels. After all, most of the Blood Moon believers present had average abilities. In terms of bloodline, they were basically not considered to be very high. Professionals with high bloodlines all had a proud heart. Apart from pledging allegiance to some powerful forces, why would they believe in a Blood Moon Dark Witch? Among them, William was the most eye-catching. He resisted the attacks of 5 Grandmaster professionals alone. He didn't have any defensive means at all. Every move he made was a move that risked his life. But no one present could touch him at all. Mental Strength Mage? Would. Attribute Warrior? Would. The players were dumbfounded as they looked at William's health bar. When he was attacked, it increased rapidly. Suddenly, his health bar decreased by a lot. But when he was attacked again, his health bar increased again. It cannot be helped. When William was attacked, his health points would increase. Every attack would activate his heart of thunder. So when he felt that his health points were decreasing rapidly, he would hide in the crowd. A group of nobodies would attack him, but they could not deal more than 2% damage to his health points. Then his health points would increase rapidly. Every time, he would recover 20% of his health points and 2% of his maximum health points. TSK, TSK. How terrifying. When the Blood Moon believers saw that William was difficult to defeat, they gathered more people to attack them. But the more they fought, the more shocked they became. The more they fought, the more afraid they became. The guy in front of him was actually able to maintain full HP as he fought. Was she even a half-elf? Were he a titan or a dragon? Did he have the bloodline of a behemoth? Meanwhile, Lancelot came alone. He seemed to know a secret. He shouted, "Let's deal with these nobodies first. Then, we'll deal with the Blood Moon Dark Witch together." *M*, they're too much. They're too much. Some of the Grandmaster believers were furious. One of the great mages retreated. His incantations continued to ring out. The entire underground space was filled with rumbling noises. Suddenly, cracks appeared under everyone's feet. Blazing flames appeared. Lava. It was as if the entrance to an endless abyss had been opened. But the great magician was still unwilling to give up. He would rather overdraft all the magic in his body and exhaust his life. He listened. There was a roar from hell. A huge palm reached out from the magma and grabbed the crack that was about to close. Everyone gasped. Sheehan hurriedly shouted, "Stop him! It's the fire devil, a creature from the mythological era. If it comes out, we're dead. We're definitely dead." But just as she spoke, William had arrived in front of the fire devil's palm. He used his small fist to punch the fire devil's fingers palm, 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 palm. 5 consecutive blows. Roar! The fire devil howled in pain. All 5 of his fingers were fractured. But when he released his grip, plop, he fell into the pit. The summoning great mage died expressionlessly. The other Blood Moon believers were expressionless. Chapter 349. The sudden appearance and disappearance of the Balrog. It was a roller coaster ride for the Blood Moon believers. Of course, it was a roller coaster ride for the Blood Moon believers. Many of them had a strange feeling. Could it be that the Balrog was too weak? How could his fingers be broken so easily by punches? However, the Blood Moon believers were not the only group of weak Blood Moon believers. William and his companions had killed more than half of the thousands of Blood Moon believers present. But the 5 of them had expended a lot of energy. This was equivalent to the few of them going head-on against a very powerful army. William killed the last Grandmaster who was surrounding him. The remaining Blood Moon believers retreated. 5 people in black robes with the Blood Moon painted on their backs walked out of the crowd with heavy footsteps. 5th Elder of the Blood Moon. William narrowed his eyes. In his previous life, the Blood Moon Dark Witch did not die. After Karen Kingdom fell into the Dark World, the Blood Moon organization appeared many times and caused many dark incidents. William thought that these 5 people were talents found after the resurrection of the Blood Moon Dark Witch. He did not expect them to be followers of the Blood Moon Dark Witch. Great Elder of the Blood Moon. One of them walked in front of William and took off his cloak. 2 slender long swords hung at his waist. 2nd Elder of the Blood Moon. Another person walked towards little Angel Sheehan. He did not take off his black cloak, but a death scythe appeared in his hand. 3rd Elder of the Blood Moon. They introduced themselves one after another. Each of them took out a different weapon. But no matter what, these 5 Grandmaster-level fellows all seemed to be extremely difficult to deal with. After Chu Liuqiu and the other players used their insight, they became worried. 5 legendary Grandmasters. Gosh, Prince William is like a wave crashing onto the beach. Are we going to die? How about we slip away now? It just so happens that His Highness is at the front. Otherwise, if we were to be trapped in the world of darkness, we might not even be able to get out. "Forever alone," said, with a pained expression. But no one cared about what he said. After all, the others were a little afraid. The players did not know how big the difference between legends was, especially from the players' memories. Besides killing the legendary boss, Burned Cinder, William had not killed anyone else. With the addition of the Blood Moon Dark, which was about to be resurrected, this woman was clearly stronger. How were they supposed to fight? However, at this moment, a voice suddenly rang out. "The King of Carenza is dead." The Viscount of Darkness appeared in the palace and split him in half with one move. Lancelot came alone. Of course, when he came over, he brought along his little companion, the Viscount of Darkness, who was tailing behind him. However, the Viscount of Darkness didn't make a move. He just followed behind Lancelot. No one knew what he was thinking. It was also at this moment. The black witch within the barrier suddenly sat up. Her entire body was wrapped in a ball of blood, and she gradually floated into the air. No one knew exactly how strong she was. Many players felt their vision blur. The blood orb seemed to be burning, making it hard for them to see clearly. Then, now is the time. William tilted his head, and a weapon appeared in his left and right hands. Burned Cinder, Diablo, Lautner, and Chien also stood behind him, forming an A shape. Just as the 5 Blood Moon Elders were feeling puzzled, William and the other 4 raised their weapons at the same time. At that instant, 5 streaks of battle energy of different colors condensed into a giant sword energy that was 100 meters long. It's a combined attack. Lancelot, the Viscount of Darkness, and the Blood Moon believers couldn't help but shout. Lancelot muttered in his heart, "What kind of combined attack is this? How did they manage to train a combined attack with different attributes?" But now, no one was going to explain to him. Be careful. Don't let them break the barrier and interrupt the Master's resurrection. The Blood Moon Great Elder's gaze turned cold. He immediately led countless people and charged forward. They wanted to stop the sword energy, even if it meant sacrificing their lives. At this second, countless battle energy and magic spells bloomed in the darkness. However, accompanied by the sound of air being sliced, the almost solid broadsword sliced everything into dust like breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Whether it was the battle energy slash, the magic shield, or the super shields of various attributes, there was almost no need for the sword to approach. Just the moment the released sword energy neared the barrier, everything turned into dust, until the broadsword slashed heavily against the barrier of darkness. Bang! Crack! Half of the saber blade cut into the interior of the barrier, and the saber chi that was released suddenly exploded. This seemingly indestructible dark barrier also exploded. At the same time, the Blood Moon Dark, which seemed to be affected. Wave-like marks appeared on the blood ball that covered her body. As the marks grew larger and more obvious, bang! The huge blood ball suddenly dispersed. There was a pool of blood in this underground space, and the air was filled with the pungent smell of blood. The group of half-dead Blood Moon believers were stunned. They never expected that the resurrection of the Blood Moon Dark, which would be interrupted. However, the moment the blood completely dispersed, Lin Fan's eyes widened. A naked woman with long, blood-red hair was floating in the air with her arms crossed. She opened her eyes. That was the moon. That was the high and mighty Blood Moon. That was the heart-wrenching Blood Moon. Everyone heard a buzzing sound. The entire underground space began to tremble. Huge rocks kept falling from the top of his head. This lasted for more than 10 seconds. But the Blood Moon believers did not care. Their eyes turned blood-red as they knelt in front of the Blood Moon Dark Witch in a daze. Their heads were pressed tightly against the ground. They kowtowed continuously. Their heads bled. Their white bones were visible to the naked eye. William narrowed his eyes and used the super telescope mode to carefully observe the body of the Blood Moon Dark Witch. He wanted to find out her weaknesses. Oh, she was very white. Pooey. She was very big. Ahem, she was very powerful. Yes, her mental strength was very powerful. Oh, don't ask William how he could see the powerful mental strength of the Blood Moon Dark Witch. The secret of the Eye of Thunder was not that simple. It was a pity. Just when everyone thought that she was going to change her clothes, the Blood Moon Dark Witch snapped her fingers. "Ha! A blood-red robe appeared on her body, and a pink skirt was tied at her waist. How disappointing. However, her two snow-white breasts were faintly discernible. Her long and slender legs made Burn Cinder and Diablo tilt their heads. They wished they could lie on the ground and look up. They had no choice. She was very attractive. Apart from William and Little Angel Chien, the other players were also dumbfounded, especially the viewers of Fatty's live broadcast. They shouted, "Host, go over and get closer. What can you see from so far away?" "Yes, yes, yes. Host, hurry up. If you don't go over, I'll unfollow you." Fatty did not want to bother with them. However, these fans had completely forgotten about their friends. The group of threatening people immediately unfollowed her. Seeing the number of followers dropping by the hundreds, little Fatty could only drag his sturdy legs and move closer. "Gosh, that's the Blood Moon Dark Witch. Is she a boss? She's just a cute and fierce girl next door. I'm a fan of the Blood Moon Dark Witch's legs. D*M*N. Prince William is also very handsome. Do they have to fight to the death? Can't they have an intense melee battle?" "What melee battle? I don't understand. What kind of melee battle are you talking about?" "Oh, I'm feeling better. I'm going offline. I'm going to sleep. Boss, you're fast." Back to the Blood Moon Dark Witch. She was originally a princess of the Carenza Grand Duchy. Her name was Lena Carenza. She had royal blood flowing in her veins. Moreover, the wives of the king were usually very beautiful. Naturally, the princes and princesses that she gave birth to were also very attractive. In the current situation, she was only slightly inferior to William. Of course, it was not that Little Angel Chien was not beautiful enough. However, she usually only wore armor, and her legs were exposed. William had seen her in her pajamas once. Gosh, it was a nosebleed. If not for the fact that Prince William was underage, he would have to walk out with his back bent. Of course, what had just been said was off topic. The Blood Moon, which stepped on the air with her bare feet and walked briskly. She looked like a little elf as she arrived in front of William and the others. She used an extremely seductive gaze and tone to ask, "Are you here to kill me?" A red ribbon had appeared beside William's neck. William sniffed and grabbed the ribbon with his left hand of the Thunder God. "Of course, if you immediately restore the city to its original state, I won't attack you. I'm sure everyone knows that I don't hit women. I'm the Lord of the City of Dawn, an elven prince. I'm a man of my word. If you don't believe me, you can ask me." Little Angel Chien heard this and could not help but look at William with a strange gaze. The meaning behind his words was profound. The Blood Moon Dark Witch was a little surprised. Her charm did not work. She did not know why, but she felt that the elf in front of her was very handsome. It seemed that his words were true. That was right. He was an elf, and elves usually did not lie. However, she still hurriedly shook her head and grinned like a girl next door. "That won't do. This royal city must fall into darkness. If you don't hit women, can you leave?" Crisp. Very crisp. He even noticed the notification in the message box. If it wasn't for his higher charisma value, William also understood why the group of Blood Moon believers in front of him were all male. They were using the same trick as him. But William's charm was of a higher level. "I only rely on my face. I don't rely on my voice, figure, breasts, or legs." Of course, it was okay to look. Even if he did not make use of them, it did not mean that he did not admire them. William carefully sized up the Blood Moon, who was right in front of him. His lips curled into a smile as he walked over and lifted the witch's chin with his hand. The Blood Moon Dark Witch pursed her lips. She thought that her charm was effective. Swish! William grabbed her by the neck. Uft! The sword of Hex stabbed from the bottom to the top. It pierced through her chest all the way to the top of her skull. At that moment, the Blood Moon Dark Witch bled from her 7 orifices. She held William's left hand in disbelief. The others also looked at this scene in disbelief. What the heck? Didn't he say that he would not hit women? Brother, what about your promise? Especially with such a beautiful girl. How could you bear to lay your hands on her? William could not be bothered to answer. He did not hit women, but he had killed them. It was a pity that the Blood Moon Dark Witch did not die. She seemed to have shed her skin. Her body gradually turned into a mummy. She slowly appeared from her own shadow. Her expression was one of shock and anger. The The wounds on her chest and head gradually healed. At this moment, countless Blood Moon believers stood up. Then there was a battle. Both sides engaged in another battle. Chapter 350. The Blood Moon, which would not die so easily. Though her resurrection was interrupted, she did not become an enchanter. She was still half a step into it, and her strength was unpredictable. As long as she had the chance to absorb enough blood, she would be able to absorb enough energy to make a huge leap. Thus, even though she seemed to have suffered a fatal injury, even though the king of Corinza was dead, she still had to turn her body into ashes before her life could be completely ended. The Blood Moon, which looked deeply at William. She touched her red lips seductively with her finger, and the remaining Blood Moon believers charged out from her left and right without a care for their own safety. They were like a swarm of locusts as they roared and charged. The 5 Blood Moon elders brought along a series of explosions as they charged forward. A huge battle ensued. William and the rest fought fiercely with them. The Viscount of Darkness attacked at the same time, intending to stop Lancelot from helping. As for the 10 players, they could only hide at the back, trying not to be discovered. However, some Blood Moon believers still charged forward. But unexpectedly, these players, who seemed to be naked, summoned their equipment at the first moment and beat up the Blood Moon believers who attacked them alone. They were not weak either. They were like a group of rats. Occasionally, they would grab a lone Blood Moon believer and slash it violently before running away. It was very exciting. The prince seemed to be facing more pressure as he had to face the Blood Moon Great Elder and many minions at the same time. But because of these minions, he could fight with the Blood Moon Great Elder without a care for his life. A dual sword-wielding dark warrior. The Blood Moon Great Elder looked middle-aged, but he was actually an old monster who had lived for hundreds of years. However, he was still stuck at the Grandmaster realm despite his legendary bloodline. It was obvious that the Blood Moon, which had cursed him to prevent him from escaping her control. However, he had honed his killing techniques for hundreds of years at the Grandmaster realm, and his various combat techniques were at the peak. He was on par with William for a while. Buzz! Buzz! Lightning continued to shoot out from William's eyes. He blocked with his 2 long swords, which deflected the thunder ray and shot some unlucky fools to death. Just as he stopped the thunder ray, the Blood Moon Great Elder stepped forward. His dual swords, which were burning with black flames, continuously slashed at William. Although the prince's weapon was long, it was not as agile as the Blood Moon Great Elder's dual swords. All of a sudden, his upper body was covered in wounds, and his flesh was so badly mangled that it was unbearable to look at. But when William used the Hand of Soul, he grabbed an unlucky soul that was tens of meters away. His left hand grabbed the soul's head. Crack! His head almost exploded. Next, a struggling soul emerged from his body and fused into William's. The injuries on his body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. The Blood Moon Great Elder frowned. There was something wrong with this elf in front of him. Why did he feel that she was more like a dark-type professional than him? Even her moves were so perverted. The prince, who had been revived once again, glanced at the witch who was sucking blood from the battlefield. He didn't want to delay any longer. A shield of chi appeared on the surface of his body. Speed of Thunder, increase speed by 30%. Power of Saint Spirit, increase all attributes by 33%. Speed, power, defensive power. In that instant, William exploded with a series of sonic booms. He raised his arm and slashed downwards. Swoosh! The dazzling lightning strike struck the Blood Moon Great Elder's head. His pupils shrank nonstop. The speed was too fast. He could only attempt to block this attack. Bang! A shockwave that flashed with lightning and dark flames penetrated a radius of hundreds of meters. The Blood Moon Great Elder was hammered into the ground like a nail. William slashed again. The Great Elder, who was covered in blood, gritted his teeth and raised his arm. But the long and narrow lightning sword instantly appeared in front of the Blood Moon Witch. William kneed the Great Elder's shin and pulled him out of the ground with his mouth full of blood. Then, he punched the Great Elder's face with his left fist. Bang! The Blood Moon Great Elder was like a dead dog and was about to fly away. William didn't let him off. The sword of Hex in his right hand pierced through the Great Elder's body and nailed him to the altar. Lightning flashed. William followed closely behind and punched with his left hand of the divine god. Boom! The Blood Moon Great Elder's head was gone. At the same time, many Blood Moon believers saw that the situation was not good and rushed over. William stared at the Blood Moon Witch. He ignored the hundreds of professionals that were charging over and walked forward step by step, just as their skills were about to reach him. Bang! A visible soul shock wave engulfed a radius of a few hundred meters. Hundreds of Blood Moon believers were sent flying into the air. Many of their souls were knocked out of their bodies in midair, and there was no possibility of them returning to their bodies. When they landed on the ground with a loud thud, William had already walked to the front of the Blood Moon Witch. It was such a scene. Many people couldn't believe their eyes, especially the Viscount of Darkness. He could sense that William had become much stronger. He was many times stronger than he was at the Magic Conference. It was not only the qualitative change of becoming a Grandmaster. It was also the qualitative change of his abilities. The Blood Moon Witch, who was wearing a long red robe and revealing her slender legs, looked deeply at William. This time, she didn't use a seductive voice. Instead, she said sincerely, "You don't have to follow me. You can be my king, and I'll be your queen." William raised his eyebrows. "I'm going to inherit the throne of the elves. I'm not interested in being your king. Then you can die." The Blood Moon, which didn't want to be in close contact with William. A pair of blood-red wings suddenly appeared behind her back. In the next second, she clenched her fist, and the ground under William's feet cracked. Countless black tentacles grabbed at his thighs. At this moment, thunder exploded under William's feet, and countless black tentacles were repelled. He took the opportunity to fly up and appear in front of the Blood Moon, which like a cannonball. However, a blood screen appeared in front of William. After William smashed it with his fist, the Blood Moon, which was already above his head. William raised his head, and there was endless bloody light. Bang! A pillar of corrosive blood that was like a mountain smashed into the ground with a loud rumble. The ground within a radius of 10 meters sank by several meters. Swish! A ray of thunder, sword energy split the blood column, and William walked out like a bloody man. The surface of his body continuously emitted the corrosive debuff. It was obvious. This time, not only was William's hair burned, but his skin was also almost gone. Only his flesh was left. The Blood Moon, which suddenly smiled sweetly and said, Under your handsome appearance, there is still an ugly body of flesh and blood." "That's right, but even in this appearance, I'm still more handsome than you." William suddenly opened his eyes, and 2 thunder beams shot out, hitting the Blood Moon Witch's body. This time, the thunder ray did not stop. It kept attacking her body, pushing her to the wall, pushing her to the deepest part of the wall. It was accompanied by an ear-piercing roar. The shockwave spread across a radius of thousands of meters. Many people could not help but cover their ears because of the huge sound wave. But the Blood Moon, which walked out in ragged clothes. She faced William's eye of thunder head-on. However, she had no skin on her front, and she looked like a horrifying zombie. In the next second, the Blood Moon Witch's body continued to expand. From her slender figure, she became a demonic monster. Bang! The 2 monsters collided head-on. Bang! Bang! A ray of thunder light. A ray of blood-red light. They collided with each other at the highest speed. Every time they separated, they collided with each other at a faster speed. The space within a radius of 10,000 meters was the battlefield where they collided. Everywhere they passed, countless Blood Moon believers were smashed into flesh and blood. Some were even sent flying into the air. However, they could only see the 2 rays of light colliding. Waves of shockwave surged. The ground continued to crack. The echoes in the enclosed space continued to echo. The intense collision lasted for more than 30 seconds. After the last collision, everyone saw the thunder light pressing down on the blood light and slamming it against the wall. Boom! A huge crack extended from the wall to the top of the head. Huge rocks fell from the sky. It was as if the space was about to collapse and crush everyone to death. William dragged the Blood Moon Witch's fractured calf with one hand, as if he was dragging a corpse. Then, he flung her out. The players inhaled a breath of cold air. The current Blood Moon, which no longer looked like a human, her body had collapsed, and her bones were all broken. She was like rotten meat. William's injury did not look good, but William did not give up. He half-squatted beside the Blood Moon Witch's body. He punched. Bang! The ground shook violently. The collapse of the space became more obvious. But William did not stop. He punched again and again, one punch after another. William used the left hand of the Thunder God to destroy the Blood Moon Witch. Not a single trace of her was left. She was dead. William, the violent maniac, had hammered him to death just like that. The players received the mission completion notification, but the entire space was about to collapse. Countless huge rocks fell one after another. Diablo immediately roared, "Everyone, come over here!" With a wave of his hand, he scattered countless magical metals that enveloped everyone. As for William, who was far away from them, before they could run over and wait for His Royal Highness to come over, they could only watch helplessly as he was buried under countless boulders. In the moment the Blood Moon Witch died, the remaining Blood Moon believers regained consciousness. However, the moment the countless boulders fell down, Li Tianlan's eyes widened. They were in despair. The cave entrance was blocked by the rocks. Even if they could break it, it would take some time. The Viscount of Darkness' mouth twitched. He had given up on pestering Lancelot and allowed him to run into Diablo's metal protective shield. After all, he could not allow his favorite companion to die. A black vortex appeared under his feet, and he disappeared. The deafening rumbles continued without end. It was as if the entire city had collapsed. But everyone heard the sound of a transmigration bubble. Poof! An east wind swept away the haze. The fog dissipated. The bright and warm sunlight once again shone on the entire city. Chapter 351. The entire Karen kingdom was bathed in sunlight. The professionals who knew the truth cheered and celebrated. As for the ignorant commoners who were waiting for their deaths, they thought that the crisis had been averted. They finally smiled and dared to bask in the sunlight. Some experts who were hiding in the dark retreated when they saw that the original location of Karen Kingdom had been restored. This included the human sage who was responsible for retrieving the rescuers. The affairs of Karen Kingdom were not under their control. No matter how chaotic the country was, it was a civil war between the humans. As long as it was not related to the Dark World, it was enough. As for the earthquake in the library, nobody paid attention to it. There were even some people who didn't know how to get back to the city. It can only be said that both the demon hunters and the vast majority of the people in this country were idiots. In William's previous life, there was a reason why this city had fallen into the Dark World. Back to the library. The Grandmaster professionals were very powerful. As long as they were not crushed by the collapsed boulders, they could slowly climb out of the soil that was more than 200 meters deep. Diablo and his companions dug out a tunnel and were about to search for the buried William. They heard someone calling out to them, "Hey, why are you so slow?" Diablo, Burn Cinder, and many players turned to look. They saw Prince William sitting on the ruins of the library. His legs were drooping as he drank wine. He looked as if he had been out for a long time. In particular, his blood-covered injuries had long since healed. But the players could not help but laugh. Prince William's head was very shiny. William glanced at Fatty, who was doing a live broadcast. Fatty felt a chill in his heart. Fatty hoped that William would turn off the live broadcast. Then he touched Dimlight's head and said, "Let's go and receive the reward. The king is dead. Can the promise be fulfilled?" Chongli Jioga could not help but ask. William pursed his lips and said, "Money is more important than life. Karen Kingdom has suffered a great calamity. The current king is dead, and the young prince has yet to ascend the throne. That's why we have to be on good terms with the City of Dawn. Even if the reward is not much, it will not be little. You destroyed all the evidence. What if other demon hunters impersonate us?" Diablo asked again, An exaggerated collapse had buried all the evidence. Although digging it up wasn't troublesome, it was still very difficult to find proof. If I had known this would happen, I would have used a water mirror spell to record the scene. Someone's mouth twitched, but they were too busy at the time, and there was no suitable magician to use the water mirror spell. Look, William stretched out his hand. 2 blood-red beads, no. What the F asterisk CK? Eyes? Everyone gasped. The prince chuckled. The eyes of the Blood Moon Witch. Her eyes are very special. Her pupils have always been crescent-shaped. This is recorded in the Carinza royal family. Although the Blood Moon Witch incident was a scandal, there were definitely people in the royal family who knew about this secret. This counts as evidence, right? After saying that, William clamped the 2 eyeballs in his hands and rolled them like walnuts. When the others saw this, they were speechless. The players, in particular, widened their eyes. F asterisk CK, His Royal Highness has a lot of bad habits. Take the Blood Moon Witch's eyeball plate. TSK, TSK. He was indeed the most handsome man in the legendary continent. His mind was indeed extraordinary. Originally, someone wanted to ask if the 2 pairs of eyeballs would lead to resurrection. But after thinking about it, they did not ask because resurrection did not work. They understood. Anyway, the witch would not be able to escape from His Royal Highness. William did not explain much. Soon, he brought everyone to the Carinza kingdom. This time, he came with the identity of a demon hunter. But the royal guards did not dare to slight the Lord of the City of Dawn. Soon, they respectfully invited them in. Meanwhile, the Carinza kingdom was holding the coronation ceremony of the new king. It was like a 7 or 8-year-old child being carried to the throne. It was very casual. It cannot be helped. Currently, the Carinza Grand Duchy urgently needed a new king to stabilize the hearts of the people, especially when they had just gone through a great ordeal. There was no time for messy ceremonies. It was enough as long as some prominent nobles came to testify. Even if the old king who had just been killed had not been buried yet, William and his companions casually looked around. Soon, a guard brought them to the side hall and said, "Honorable Queen Dowager, the savior of the city, Lord of the City of Dawn, Prince Blackleaf, has arrived. You may leave." A calm voice sounded. "Prince William, please come in. Can the other guests take a rest first?" 2 sentences. He asked for a private chat with William. The others felt helpless. What was going on? Did they have some secrets to share? But when the door opened, some curious fellows peeked in. Gosh, what a beautiful, charming, and graceful young woman. But it was a pity. Before the others could take a few more looks, the prince quickly closed the door. TSK, TSK. I'm worried that Prince William will not return. Angry Fatty suddenly sighed. Don't say that. Prince William is not interested in a witch who is so beautiful. Xiao Ayan wanted to say something, but she suddenly shut her mouth. After all, no one knew what Prince William liked. What if he liked a young woman who was extremely famous and had high status? In this era of 100,000 megabytes of information per second, Xiao Ayan knew a lot. In particular, everyone had seen the old king. TSK, TSK. He was only in his 20s, but his kidneys were extremely weak. It was obvious that he did not have any abilities. And now, the Empress Dowager, who was also young, was the former queen. Naturally, she was not satisfied. In addition, Prince William's reputation was very high in the southern region. He was even given the title of the most handsome professional in the southern region. Many ignorant young girls, lonely young women, and lonely noble ladies dreamed of meeting the Lord of the City of Dawn. Greetings, Prince William. You can call me Elena. She had long black hair and wore simple clothes. She was polite and seductive. She was sitting on the chair that belonged to the king. She gestured for William to sit beside her. William nodded. After all, he was not an ordinary person. No matter how much she exposed her legs and breasts, he did not change. He nodded politely and said, "Greetings, Queen Dowager. Prince William, are you here to ask for the bounty? If that's the case, please show me the evidence that you resolved the disaster in the city." Elena covered her mouth and chuckled. "Of course, it's fine if you can't show me the evidence. After all, you're the only one who came to the palace to ask for the bounty." But Elena bit her lips as she spoke. She revealed a look that said, "Come on, I don't need evidence." Even if the crisis was not resolved by him, it could be resolved by him. William narrowed his eyes. His heart was as calm as still water. He did not feel tempted at all, because this young lady seemed to be seducing him, but her impression of him did not increase. Then, there must be a conspiracy. Even if this fellow's impression of him didn't decrease, her impression of him didn't increase. That was a problem. William maintained his etiquette. He stretched out his left hand, which was in a state of thunder, and brought the two red eyeballs to the front of the stage. At this moment, now, Her Holiness was no longer as flirtatious as before. There was only a sense of fear. She waved her hands repeatedly and shouted in fear. "Take it away! Take it away! I believe this evidence. Why don't you completely destroy her? If you destroy her, there will be no evidence." William laughed. It was easy for NPCs to go back on their word when it came to mission rewards. In his previous life, he had been cheated many times. Now, he was the Lord of the City of Dawn. He had a powerful background. But even so, as long as he did not have any evidence, he had to continue bickering with her. Of course, he did not expect that this lady did not want to bicker with him. Instead, of course, William was not willing. He was not a man who would sell his chastity. Elena saw that William had retracted the Crimson Witch's eyes. She did not want to continue bickering with William. She said in a deep voice, 2,000 kilograms of mithril, 2,000 kilograms of adamantine, 2,000 kilograms of orichalcum, 3 million gold coins, and 50,000 magical stones. These are the rewards that we agreed upon. I can get someone to pass them to you now." "Good." William nodded and was about to leave. Elena hesitated for a while before she said, "Please send 30,000 soldiers from the City of Dawn to help maintain the security of the city. This will prevent the nobles from rebelling." "Price?" William raised his eyebrows. "Additional." "Quae." The prince nodded. Subsequently, the Empress Dowager called out an equally beautiful young girl. The two of them looked at each other with almost unscrupulous eyes and said, "Shenlong, bring Prince William to receive his reward." William cursed in his heart. No wonder she had a good impression of him. So, she was this kind of person? She was awesome, brother. Then why did she seduce him? William was taken aback. He seemed to have understood something. Elena seemed to be a person who had a strong desire for power. This woman was not interested in him, but she was interested in the power behind him. She did not like men, but she had slept with the king many times. She did not mind selling her body. She wanted to use his power to help stabilize the country. She wanted to help the queen to ascend the throne and become the queen of the country. She was not the Queen Dowager, the Queen Dowager. William understood. He stood up and glanced at Elena. He did not have any other thoughts. He did not have the hobby of an empress, especially an empress who had been played with before. He hurriedly walked out of the room. He did not care that others thought that he was weak. He silently tapped on the S-level mission to complete. This was the system reward. It was not bad. Chapter 352. He did not have any information about this mission. Without special weapons and skills, it was difficult to defeat the endowment of the diamond body. An entire day passed. It was the kind that made dang-dang sounds. It matched the endowment of the diamond body. It was not for the so-called rewards. Hence, there were many participants. Burn Cinder and the others suddenly felt that Prince William had become stronger. His kidneys were not weak, and he was in high spirits. Next, without the reinforcement of the 30,000 Dawn army, the nobles would start a war. Hence, this was an A+ mission. Did he already have some sort of sane aura? But his safety index was very high. The Fire Dragon Instance Dungeon was more impressive. That was the current situation. But the Dawn army came. It was very slow. There was no room for resistance. The players who joined the Blood Moon faction were even more miserable. Attacks that were lower than 2,800 points had no effect on them. All of them were misses. As expected, a delightful notification sound appeared. Handsome. Only hard damage could truly deal a blow to it. If they charged forward, they would be killed instantly. At least, they would not be criticized by the human empires. Without a doubt, most of the damage done by the enemy would be reduced by 10%. As for the eyeball of the blood moon, which that Prince William had been searching for a few days, he threw it to Moses. Time passed. Prompt. Your endowment iron body has been upgraded to diamond body. The blood moon witch's graceful figure and naked state made many people excited. Their little brother was tough. The blood moon dark witch incident was resolved. At least the dragon blood, dragon scales, and equipment were profitable, because someone had shared the video of Fatty's live broadcast on the forum. The bonus of Bloodline was a big problem. This was an S+ mission for the players. Even though he was only an S-level mission, the rewards were excellent. The players, who were only intermediate professionals, didn't even enter the underground space. During the battle at the church, they were almost completely annihilated. It was unbearable. This was because the effect of being handsome could be said to be insane. It was even effective on deities. Although it would definitely not be too obvious, it was still very F***ing insane. Alright? Damn, I'm so tanky. William inhaled a breath of cold air. With his current tankiness, unless the advanced professionals used their ultimate skills, they would not be able to break through his defense. However, they were up against the powerful prince. The male players were instantly fired up. His entire body, even his third leg, would have defensive power. His mother would no longer have to worry about him carrying on the family line. He was baptized by the blood pillar, which directly caused the skin all over his body to suffer from destructive corrosive damage. In an instant, he turned from a handsome young man to a bloody zombie. Brothers, there are different factions inside. I've already activated team mode. Hurry up and join the party. When the time comes, we'll all join the Blood Moon Believers faction. We'll be able to get close to the Blood Moon Witches. Although they all had some judgment. There were 3 of them. He was about to embark on his second dark event mission. Professionals in this state were almost immune to poison, immune to most burns, poisons, paralysis, and other buffs. The dark curse of the Blue Frost Empire. In just one day. But then again, elemental conversion has nothing to do with the diamond body. It seems that the two can be stacked. The prince gulped. He was not so tanky in his previous life, nor did he have the opportunity to be so tanky. The situation was not good. Blood Moon Instance, Dungeon Crystal X, 1, there was no other way. There was no other way. But even so, some of the lower-ranked vampires were still caught at this moment. If they wanted to level up again, they had to enter the epic stage, which was the Realm Warrior. Only then could they further elemental conversion. Although the Fire Dragon Instance dungeon required gold coins, it was still not a loss, but it was still an honor in the history of the City of Dawn. They had captured the vampires and exchanged them for contribution points of the Dawn Army. In other words, more importantly, I won't allow my skin to be destroyed easily. William scratched his bald head. When he fought with the Blood Moon Witches, most of the enemy's buffs on you will be weakened by 20%, and the duration of the buffs will be reduced. When the players joined William's side, they had to replace the position of an NPC or a player. Only William, who was the main force in clearing the instance dungeon, could not be replaced. They wanted to take a few more looks at the naked state of the Blood Moon Witches. Even if the Blood Moon Witches were tightly covered, it was not a loss to spend money to take a look. TSK. D***man. The church mission is too difficult. It said that we have to persevere for 5 minutes. But with just a group of Blood Moon believers and the players, how can we resist the 6 legendary bosses, Prince William, Lancelot, and Diablo? It's impossible. Once again, William sold these vampires, who were crying and begging for death, to some demon hunters without mercy. William did not explain, but his physical toughness had reached the upper limit. This would be a great bargaining chip for the future development of the City of Dawn. The lowest level of the mission was A+ level. William had found a mage apprentice and a female magical assistant for Moses. Even if the players had the same endowment, if an ordinary enemy slashed him, his health points would be restored to full without hesitation. Only when Lan Yu, Emerald, and Dark City could not wait any longer would they reveal the true identity of the vampires. But this instance dungeon was a small-scale team instance dungeon. At most, 30 players could choose to join one faction. When stacked, they would have a defense of 2,500 points. He had to remember, at this moment, he was thinking about a problem. They should have a common interest. Even though the defense of the diamond body and the steel body was only 0, 5 points apart, with his current attributes, the power of bloodline, and the defense of his equipment. Moreover, the damage would be reduced. It did not give William another legendary status. With the additional 300 points of defense, he had a defense of 2,800 points. Gosh, 2,500 points of defense. I'm going to have a double whammy again. William was overjoyed. Pervert scum. I want to follow Prince William. As long as I follow him, I won't be able to see anything. But it was a good idea to hand it over to Moses. The value of a family heirloom was much higher than what the players had imagined. William did not hesitate to sell the Blood Moon Dark, which instanced Dungeon Crystal. What's this called? I'll use her again and again. If the Blood Moon, which still dares to court death, I'll use her again. Perhaps I'll get another instance Dungeon Crystal. TSK, TSK. I'm really smart. William stroked his bald head. He could not help but praise himself for his wit. They were instantly killed. William and his companions would definitely lose. Because they did not have a combined attack, they could not interrupt the Blood Moon Dark Witch. William's trip to the Carenza Grand Duchy was a success. Now, the Queen Dowager wanted to control the power and wanted to use the Dawn mercenary team to suppress the other nobles. This was a win-win deal. That was to say, it was still impossible. In the Gods game, if the overall defense exceeded 2,500 points, there would be a hidden effect. He wanted to go to the extreme north for a stroll. Even if he could not complete the mission, he could kill a useless white dragon. It'd be good to visit the snow elves ding-dong. But compared to the NPCs, he was still at a disadvantage. Especially for William, who had more than 100,000 health points. The damage of the small skills was just a drizzle. Endowment, diamond body. 1 physical strength equals 2, 5 points of defense. Your defense will increase by an additional 300 points. Your maximum health will increase by 3,000 points. When you activate your battle energy and magic, your skin, flesh, bones, and even your hair will become as hard as metal. It had to be known. According to the 50% recovery rate of his physical strength, he would have 1,022 points of physical strength after adding the bloodline bonus, equipment, and battle energy secret manuals. He would recover 500 points of health every second. Moreover, with the effect of the mutated Thunder Body, at that time, Prince William did not intend to kill everyone in the church. He wanted to retreat. Why did Prince William become like a madman and kill everyone in sight at the moment when the endowment was strengthened? But it was obvious. Even if the nobles did not choose to rebel and there was no war, the mission level would not be reduced. William paid attention to the advancement speed of the Crimson Blood players. Gosh, long legs, big breasts, here I come. It can't be helped. This is the strongest endowment that a Grandmaster Shield Warrior can achieve. Of course, the Shield Warrior has the diamond body, so he is much fatter than me. After all, both of them were close combat mages. They did not do it to clear the game. They did not know why. They were rewarded with 2 million experience points. After the new king of Carenza ascended the throne, William could not kill the Blood Moon Witch. Even if she only had 2 eyeballs left, he could not do anything. Moreover, it was very far from the City of Dawn. When the pro players died, their performance was also very outstanding. They were far from what normal players could compare to. TSK, TSK. Under such circumstances, everyone quickly returned to the City of Dawn. But in the case of the Blood Moon Witch, those NPCs were indispensable. As long as Burn Cinder, Diablo, and the other NPCs were not there. The NPCs that could defeat the Diamond Body were basically ultimate moves. After these players arrived at the Emerald Grand Duchy, they started to accept various employment missions. They had almost forgotten about the mission that William had given them. The players were crying and cursing. Many of them went to challenge the Fire Dragon Instance dungeon again. From various aspects, it showed that the City of Dawn was on the side of justice. It was on the side of the humans and the Light faction. It had to be said that these players were too naive. The true damage dealt by the enemy would be reduced by 30%. 70 to 80,000 players spent a lot of experience points to explore the Fire Dragon Instance dungeon. I ran to the second floor of the church. Baldy killed me with a ghost arrow. I can't even hide. It could even be said that professionals of the same level, as long as they were not epic or legendary NPCs, could only deal tens or hundreds of points of damage to William with some small and medium-sized attacks. Without a doubt, Endowment Upgrade Card X, 1 William's current bloodline bonus was 110% to his four-dimensional attributes. This was the difference between a legendary boss and a player. When the time came, Carinza Grand Duchy would have to pay a high price to satisfy William's appetite. What did this mean? When William saw the endowment upgrade card, he was elated. He first tried to see if his good looks could help him level up. It had to be understood. Many players complained on the forum. There were also various screenshots. William pondered for a while. He skipped over the Grandmaster Life and Grandmaster Magic, which could not be upgraded. He directly tapped on the Body of Steel. Chapter 353. The gaming experience of the Blood Moon Witch Instance Dungeon was terrible. The players grumbled. Some players did not enter the underground space and saw the naked Blood Moon Witch. They cursed the instance dungeon on the forum for being inhumane. Why did it have so many twists and turns? Wasn't it better to be more direct? Why did they tease him so much? In the end, they all died without seeing anything, of course. There were no complaints against William. If anyone dared to speak ill of William on the forum of the City of Dawn, they would be scolded by a group of ladies. They could not even open their mouths. Even in other forums, His Royal Highness had a lot of fans. After all, looks were the most important. But it wasn't as if William hadn't been exposed recently. The forum was filled with videos and screenshots of his bald head. There were even videos of him fighting the Blood Moon Dark, which in the last moment, pathetic. Now, almost all the players were discussing that William had become bald and had become stronger. What was more important was some players who liked to dig up William's history discovered a secret of his. William had gone bald 3 times, and each time he would become stronger at an extremely fast speed. In a short period of time, many male players in the City of Dawn started to change their hairstyles. Nowadays, a group of bald players could be seen on the streets of the city almost everywhere one went. They didn't know what was wrong with these players. They clearly hadn't become stronger, but they were walking with vigor and domineeringness. It was as if they didn't care about anyone at all. There were even some strange players who formed a guild for this purpose, commonly known as the Bald Head Gang. They felt like they were part of a gang. There was no other way. This group of people did not want to spend money or become liver emperors. They could only believe in metaphysics. Until now, the players had finally found a somewhat credible metaphysics. That was, if they became bald, they would become stronger. However, when the Baldies formed a group, William's long hair grew back again. Gosh, is this a scam? Can hair grow back so fast? No, maybe Prince William fertilized his head. The prince glanced at them and twitched his mouth expressionlessly. If it weren't for the fact that all of you have suddenly become bald and the public's eyes are no longer on me, why would I waste a drop of life water? Of course. This time, William did not walk on the street just to let the players see his newly grown long hair. He was not the kind of person to show off. He was only passing by and planned to have a chat with Moses. He wanted to get to 1,000 favorable impression points. It was convenient. They were asking for magic scrolls or something. However, this matter of wanting the scrolls was just a matter of passing by. It wasn't his true motive. Bang, bang, bang. The wooden door of the fortune-telling hut creaked from the knocking, and even the magic lamp at the door shook a few times. William pushed open the door and entered. He discovered that there was only a black cat that did not know how to meow guarding the door. He chose to ignore it and completely ignored the gaze of the black cat. He stepped into Moses' secret chamber. Once inside, His Royal Highness saw Moses engrossed in the sea of books. Actually, to Moses, he was also a truth magician. It was just that he learned so quickly that he could figure out truths that some mages would need to study for their entire lives in minutes. That was why Moses looked very relaxed most of the time. Back then, Moses was unable to become a great enchanter. Now that Moses had broken his curse, he was very confident that he would become a great enchanter within a few years. This was the key reason why he had been studying hard recently. Before William could speak, Moses suddenly said, Why are you here? Ah. William was a little bewildered. Moses' tone was very stiff. Weren't Moses his good friend? Then Moses said faintly, Your mother doesn't allow me to play with you. The city lord fell into deep thought. There was a hidden meaning behind those words. Could it be that my grandmother thought of you as a bad child? She didn't allow him to play happily with Moses? Let's not talk about this first. William decided to change the topic. So he said in an iron-willed manner, What have you been up to recently? Blind. Aren't I reading a magic book now? Oh, can you give me a few magic scrolls? William said shamelessly. Moses was about to get angry, but he suddenly smiled. He looked at William helplessly and asked, Tell me, what magic scrolls do you want this time? Give me dozens of fire attack scrolls. But I also want an ice forbidden spell and dozens of poison potions. I'm afraid I'll freeze to death when I go to the extreme north. William fiddled with his fingers and asked for a bunch of expensive scrolls and potions with little effort. Of course, if he could get an ice forbidden spell, it would be worth half of the city of Dawn. Moses did not directly refuse this time. Instead, he pondered and asked, Why do you want to go to the extreme north? The professionals of the Frost Empire are a group of thugs. They only know how to fight and kill all day long. Or rather, the entire extreme north is a group of boorish people, with your small arms and legs. If a realm warrior catches you, you won't be able to escape. Moses shook his head. He sized up William's appearance and small build. It was as if he was worried that William would be captured and made a wife. William rolled his eyes and said, Aren't you going to save me? One sentence. Moses was rendered speechless. He could only sigh and take out a few dozen scrolls from a small mountain of empty scrolls. As he rubbed the magic scrolls, he said, If you're really caught, even if I know spatial magic, I won't be able to save you in a short time. How many random teleportation scrolls do you have? 2 more to go. William made a V-shaped victory sign. Then I'll give you 2 more to round it up. Moses was strangely generous this time. He even created an ice elemental forbidden spell for him. 30 minutes later, Moses threw all the magic scrolls and potions into William's arms. But the prince did not dare to accept it. He hurriedly grabbed Moses' arm and asked, Did you divine something? Don't scare me. Mo. Moses blushed and flung William away. Bang! His arms were thin, but his strength was insane. The prince instantly knocked over half of the bookshelf and was embedded into the wall. 3 seconds later, William walked down unscathed. He rubbed his head and said, Tell me, if it's too dangerous, I won't go. Although he wanted to participate in the curse that could destroy a grand duchy, it did not mean that he wanted to die. If it was too difficult for him, he could choose not to go. Moses frowned slightly. This time, he did not use the touch-hand method of divination. He took out the divination crystal and placed it in his arms for a while. Then he said, This time, your adventure is very dangerous, but it will also be accompanied by great rewards. It's up to you whether you want to go or not. Is it dangerous in the human nation, or somewhere further north? Moses frowned and shook his head. I've told you before that divination won't work if I tell you. Perhaps if I tell you where you're in danger, things will change. You'll be in a safe place, and your life will be in danger. I understand. William sighed. He knew that if he wanted to reap great rewards, there would definitely be great risks. Although his luck was very low, but he could bring along someone with high luck points. William didn't think too much about it. He said goodbye to Moses and ran away. What he did not expect after he left. With a snap of his fingers, Moses' originally masculine appearance instantly underwent a huge change. His body also became curvaceous and curvaceous. In particular, she had a beautiful face that could cause the downfall of a nation. Not only was she charming, but she also gave off a delicate feeling. Just by sitting there, her charm and confidence made people feel a sense of conquest. That was right. Moses was a woman. On the day she broke the curse of the Grand Mage, she had also regained her female appearance. Back in the magic sanctuary, Moses had the identity of a saintess. But because she had been cursed by the Grand Mage, her strength had been greatly weakened. Before Moses escaped, she had cast a curse on herself and turned herself into a man. Not only could she avoid the pursuit of the magic sanctuary, but she could also avoid many courtship troubles. Furthermore, she was the lord of the magic sanctuary, even if he thought about it for the rest of his life. It was also impossible for him to know that Moses had used such a spell. Because the Grand Mage was a sensible person, the reincarnation of the goddess of magic had never liked men, let alone turning into one. In particular, the betrayal of the Saintess was not something worth mentioning. The magic sanctuary had never publicized this matter. They had been secretly searching for her. This made the players unable to understand the true identity of Moses. At this moment, Moses was wearing a man's magical robe. She looked very alluring. She bit her red lips and suddenly narrowed her eyes. Blood Moon, come out. Yes, master. The Blood Moon Dark, which appeared out of nowhere and knelt in front of Moses. The Blood Moon Dark, which had become a true enchanter. It was obvious. Not only had she been resurrected, but she had also become stronger. But when she looked at Moses, it was as if she had seen the truth. It was a look of faith and determination. It was a look that she was willing to die for. This was how her believers had looked at her back then. Moses's eyes pierced through space. She looked at the land of the extreme north, but there seemed to be a layer of black fog blocking her vision. She said, "Follow William. As long as he is still in the Frost Empire, follow him. If he goes further north, come back." "Yes, master." The Blood Moon Dark, which nodded and left with her slender legs. After everyone had left, the goddess of magic sat cross-legged on a chair and supported her chin with her hands. Her cheeks were puffed up, and she was muttering something. Chapter 354. William had obtained many good items from Moses. He had even obtained an ice forbidden spell. But this did not mean that he only took things from Moses. From the first transaction between the two of them, William had used gold coins to make a divination for him. He had also tricked Moses into giving him the secondary occupation of a Saint Soul Mage. Next, he had given Moses a legendary dragon crystal, the blood essence of a legendary devil lord, and a blood moon, which could be resurrected and become an enchanter. Hence, it seemed as though William was able to obtain many expensive scrolls from Moses every time. But think about it. Was the blood moon, who was an enchanter, more precious than all the scrolls? She was a living one. A legendary boss enchanter had limitless potential in the future. It was possible that she could become a great enchanter. William was not the kind of person who relied on his looks to obtain benefits. He knew what he wanted and what he had to give up. This was the key reason why William and Moses had a good relationship. Of course, he did not know that Moses had regained her female identity. But the prince wasn't stupid. He had been through so much with Moses, and he vaguely knew that he was the reincarnation of a god. In addition, when he rescued Annie, Moses had missed the news that the goddess of magic could use all types of magic, and he himself could also use all types of magic. So William would definitely have some connections. But regardless of whether Moses was a man or a woman, William would still maintain his previous style of doing things. He was not the kind of person who liked to get close to women. As a prince who was ambitious, enterprising, able to endure hardships, and never complained, His Royal Highness was a prince who never complained. He had decided not to think about any relationship problems until he was 30 years old. Hey, have you heard about it? It's written on the forum that elves become adults at 40 years old, while half-elves become adults at 30 years old. Seems like it. According to the half-elves' habits, the Lord won't be able to get hard before 30 years old. The two players were discussing when they saw William walk past them expressionlessly. Ding dong. Prompt. The affinity between you and the Lord of the City of Dawn has decreased by 20 points. Prompt. The affinity between you and the Lord of the City of Dawn has decreased by 20 points. The two players widened their eyes. Gosh, they had farmed for 2 years to accumulate 20 points of affinity. Just because of this sentence, William had reduced the affinity to 0. However, the two of them grumbled for a while and decided to be more careful in the future. They couldn't gossip without reason. After all, no one knew where the city lord would suddenly appear from. But we can use the forum. I don't believe that His Highness can still read the forum. That's a good idea. As long as we avoid His Highness bootlickers, we'll be absolutely safe. William was 100 meters away from him. His pointy ears perked up. He was too lazy to say, "Maybe you don't believe me, but I spend 3 hours a day browsing the forum. I also have a small notebook in my heart that records 931 people. That's right. These are the people who have been slandering me on the forum. I'll remember all of you. Don't even think about receiving hidden missions in the City of Dawn." Subsequently, the prince summoned a few guys and asked them to follow him to the Ice Frost Empire. "We're going to the extreme north. I have to choose Burn Cinder. After all, he's a fire element professional. I can choose Old Leather, who's a time warrior. I'll ask him to place a curse on me. I'll lose 2 luck points, but his combat power will increase. This is a good idea. I have to bring Legolas along. The wind in the extreme north is very strong. For a wind element professional like him, it can increase his combat power." William muttered to himself. Soon, he chose 4 people. Subsequently, he flew to the small garden under the moonlight tree and found Annie, who was sleeping soundly in her hammock in broad daylight. William laughed mischievously. He casually pinched a blade of grass and was about to feed it to the little princess. Bang! Swoosh! William was kicked into the air by the unicorn like a cannonball. He adjusted his posture and switched to flying mode. Meanwhile, a soundproof barrier appeared beside Annie. The little rainbow unicorn grinned arrogantly, revealing 2 rows of white teeth. It looked at the prince with disdain. Therefore, the prince took out 2 horsemeat skewers from his space ring and took 2 bites when the unicorn saw this scene. It instantly became listless. It groaned and retreated to a corner. It did not show off anymore. It could not be helped. The City of Dawn was becoming more and more powerful. The guy in front of it would take out a few horsemeat skewers and eat them in front of it. Gosh, who was he trying to scare? I'll give way, all right? If you're so capable, don't always covet the few pounds of meat on my body. It's not delicious. Have you seen anyone eat a unicorn? How cruel. Do you have any humanity left? William saw the unicorn hiding at the side, feeling wronged. He ignored it. He walked in front of Annie and took out a blade of grass. Annie suddenly opened her eyes and tilted her head. She looked at William's big hand. "What are you doing?" "I'm waking you up." "Bah, I saw that blade of grass. Let's go. I'll bring you to see the snow." "Where are we going?" "There's snow here." "The Frost Empire, the extreme north." "Oh, I'm going to change my clothes." Annie woke up and yawned. She walked back to her bedroom in a daze. She almost bumped into the doorsill. However, the prince heard that Annie had been training crazily at night and sleeping during the day. Her life was turning upside down. Subsequently, William glanced at the unicorn. "Look after her. If there's any danger, avoid her. Understand?" The rainbow pony grinned. It seemed to be telling him with its eyes that it was a joke. Both of them had more than 1,000 points of luck. How could they encounter danger? Even if they entered the dark world, they could encounter a space vortex and walk back. Did he think that everyone was like him? He was a scumbag with less than 3 points of luck. William was speechless. He thought to himself, "You're right. I should not be worried about you. I should be worried about myself very soon." Annie wore thick white clothes and small cotton boots. She looked like a little penguin as she wobbled out. The prince rubbed his head. "Let's go. Our teleportation portal is very fast." "Yes, it's because the teleportation portal is fast that I have to dress like this." Annie narrowed her eyes. She had been to the Snow Elf Kingdom. She had worn a princess dress and a pair of princess crystal shoes. She wanted to be a beautiful little princess. In the end, she was almost frozen and became a little dog owner. So, this was the key reason why she was so well prepared. Subsequently, William saw the lazy old leather, the glowing eyes of Legolas, and the furious Burn Cinder. The 5 humans and 1 beast stepped into the teleportation portal under the watchful eyes of the players. But nobody noticed them. A crimson shadow followed them. Prince William is out again. This time, there are no players following him. It should be a difficult mission. Chongli Joga received the news the moment William left. Chu Yochio, who was fighting a one-on-one duel with someone else, grinned. Prince William is a Grandmaster legendary boss. He can't bring us along for everything. "Where are we going now?" Xiao Ian asked. The 10 of them had accepted the S+ mission. Everyone had obtained a large amount of experience points as well as contribution points. With their accumulated contribution points, they could exchange for a piece of legendary equipment when they reached the advanced level. Chu Liuqiu did not want to fight one-on-one anymore. He admitted defeat and said, "Let's go to Emerald Grand Duchy to capture vampires." Prince William places great importance on the Crimson Blood mission. Just look at how the City of Dawn uses contribution points to exchange for vampires. If we can capture a vampire, we'll make a profit. If we can find out the information of the other two maps, we'll make a huge profit. After he finished speaking, many professional players of the Glory Club embarked on their journey to Emerald Grand Duchy. In the future, the number of vampires in Emerald Grand Duchy and Lanyu Grand Duchy was decreasing. Coupled with the threat of the Dark Knight City, a war was inevitable. And at that moment, it was time for William to settle the score. William and his companions wanted to go to the Frost Empire. They could not just use the teleportation portal. They had to go to the Lion Kingdom first. Then, they would use the teleportation portal to go to the war-ending empire. Only then could they reach the Frost Empire. When they passed by the capital of the war-ending empire, William bumped into the second prince of the war-ending empire, Caesar Giga. Caesar Zero War had some personal guards with him, as well as some arrogant youths. When he saw William, who was about to enter the teleportation portal, he suddenly shouted, "William, why didn't you look for me when you came to the war-ending empire? I don't know how to thank you for selling me the fruit of life." William turned his head in surprise. "Prince Caesar, what a coincidence. I'm planning to go to the extreme north. I wanted to visit you when I came back." "The extreme north? You're going to the Frost Empire too?" Caesar Giga glanced at the well-dressed people and smiled. "Yes, I have some matters to attend to." William nodded. He glanced at the people behind Caesar. Those whom he had met nodded at him, while those whom he had not met forced a smile. After all, the most famous youth in the southern region was not the champion of the Magic Conference, Delosis. It was William. His City of Dawn was the only power in the entire God's world that had defeated the Darkness invasion. He had defeated the Viscount of Darkness at the Magic Conference. Recently, he had rescued the subsidiary Grand Duchy of the war-ending empire from the hands of a legendary Devil Lord. In addition, the Deputy Temple Lord of the Temple of Light had casually mentioned that he had entered the 100-year battlefield in the fantasy continent. With so many things happening to a single person, people would not look down on him just because he was a country bumpkin. Furthermore, William was the prince of the Blackleaf Elves. It was rumored that his mother had also become a legendary great enchanter after eating the fruit of life. Gosh, she was a legendary. In the human empires, even if the sages did not come out, the legendary existences could do whatever they wanted. Therefore, no matter how arrogant the geniuses of the empires were, they would not do anything rash. Those who annoyed people for no reason were killed by their families. "Let's go together. I'm going there to take a look." Caesar Giga laughed heartily. He waved his hand and signaled for the guards who were guarding the teleportation portal to make way. Was he going to collect money? Subsequently, William calculated in his heart. He had saved at least 500 gold coins in this teleportation fee. It was because the distance from the war-ending empire to the Frost Empire was not too far. It would cost 100 gold coins per person. It seems that when I come back, I can show my face and put the blame on the rich Caesar. William pondered for a while and felt that it was a good idea. He smiled at the guards who were guarding the teleportation portal. He gave him a look that said, "You better remember me." Chapter 355. Frost Empire. As the name suggested, half of the land of this huge empire in the north was covered by ice and snow. Of course, half of the land of the Frost Empire was in the North Temperate Zone, which could be used to grow food. Especially in the magical world, the plants here had the ability to resist heat, cold, drought, and other things that were unimaginable in the normal world. As for the civilians and professionals who lived closer to the extreme north, they could only buy food from the south or exchange their prey for food. But no matter what, for the humans in the extreme north, food was something that only the upper class could eat. Usually, they could only eat meat. It was not easy to eat meat every day. As long as one was human, one would get tired of eating meat all day long. There was very little salt here, so there was a shortage of salt. However, the environment was like this. It had been like this for tens of millions of years. No matter what, they had been able to endure it. The civilians and professionals who lived closer to the extreme north did not have the ambition to go south. They would rather kill more orcs and exchange them for food with the army. After all, in the eyes of the men in the extreme north, people could live for hundreds of years if they were powerful. If they were not powerful, they could only live for a few decades. If they only had a few decades, they would rather die in battle in the world of ice and snow. Why would they go to the south to suffer? Many professionals who had been to the north would complain when they returned to their hometowns. That was the rule. That was also the rule. Every day, there were rules everywhere. The bigger the city, the more rules there were. This group of fellows only had one thought in their heads. Couldn't there only be one rule? For example, if they were not happy, they would fight. The winner was the rule. After the people from the City of Dawn and Caesar Giga arrived at the Frost Empire, they bade farewell. William did not stay for long. He entered the teleportation portal and went to the northernmost part of the Frost Empire, the capital of the Frost Empire. The teleportation gate here belonged to the one closest to the extreme north. When they walked out of the teleportation portal, they found two tall warriors squatting by a brazier in the teleportation hall. Oh, they were not just warming themselves. There were also sweet potatoes, wild rabbits, and pheasants stabbed into the swords of these two fellows. Other things aside, the fragrance was quite tempting. However, they didn't care that their actions were seen by others because there were fewer rules here. They even curiously looked at William and his companion's attire. After all, even though the two guards were wearing fur-woven gloves, they were still being roasted by the flames, which was enough to show how cold it was here. But in their eyes, these five idiots, for idiots and a stupid horse, would definitely be so cold that they would rush to buy clothes to wear. William ignored their gazes. He walked to the back of the cold door and pushed it open. A cold wind blew against his face. The temperature plummeted by dozens of degrees. The snow that looked like goose feathers floated in the air, making it difficult for people to see too far. The dark clouds in the sky were very obvious. When they arrived, they were just in time for the arrival of the snowstorm. William and Annie, who had seen snow before, were not too surprised. Burned Cinder, Legolas, and Old Leather could not help but stare at the white stuff with their eyes wide open. They almost asked if the cotton candy was edible. Close the door, close the door. We're warming ourselves by the fire, brother. The guard looked at the outsiders and spoke in a friendly tone. After all, the two of them knew that these fellows had impressive equipment. This group of adventurous outsiders had strong combat power, and they were not a match for them. Otherwise, they would have scolded them. If they scolded them, they would have started fighting. Phew, it's so cool. How low is the temperature? Legolas didn't wear much. He was still in his exquisite leather armor. When he walked to the door, his breath froze, and he couldn't help but shiver. It's all right. The snowstorm has just arrived, and it's only -30 to 40 degrees now. I can't say for sure in a few hours. Where are you going? One of the guards was a middle-aged man. He had a full beard and did not look like a good person. However, the way he leaned against the wall, looking like he was eating a sweet potato that was about to freeze, was indeed a little unrestrained and handsome. The guards did not speak, but they looked at William. William turned his head and smiled. He threw 5 gold coins to the guard. The middle-aged man's eyes lit up, and he showed an expression that said, "You're a smart person." He caught the coins and skillfully bit them with his teeth. Fisk, TSK, it's like pure gold. The noble is generous. He smacked his lips and glanced at the image of the City of Dawn on the gold coins. Then he looked at the big tree behind him. Oh, he could not understand it, and he did not know which power it belonged to. But as long as it was gold, it would be easy. Of course, he did not forget the young warrior beside him. He passed 2 gold coins to the young warrior. The young warrior was beaming with joy. The middle-aged man placed a gold coin in the young warrior's palm and said, "Don't go to the brothel to look for women. The women there are full of lies. They talk about love and love, but it's all to cheat you of your money. When they earn enough money, they'll go to a warm place in the south to live. They'll marry honest people and live a carefree life. But you have to continue living here. I'll keep this gold coin for you. 2 years later, when you have enough money, I'll find you a wife." The young warrior dejectedly took the gold coin. He did not say anything. He squatted on the ground and continued roasting the rabbit. The guards of the City of Dawn did not comment or show any expressions. When they were outside, they had to be careful. They just had to remember all the things, conversations, and even the things they overheard. They could think about it when they were resting at night, but there was no need to speak or take action. Because everyone had a mission to complete, it was better to have less trouble. The middle-aged man smiled at William and said, "You're not familiar with the Glacier Kingdom, right?" "That's right. It seems that you could become a guide." William smiled. "No problem. Very few people come to the teleportation portal of the Glacier Kingdom. My nephew can take charge. Since the noble wants me to be a guide, there's no problem. You don't have to call me noble. Just call me William. What's your name?" Big Beardy, who was smiling foolishly, grinned and said 2 words, "Olaf." William nodded meaningfully. "Let's go. Bring us to buy clothes first. We can talk about other things later." "Okay, let's not talk about anything else. I know all the shops and chambers of commerce in Glacier King City very well. I can guarantee that I'll take you to the cheapest shop and buy the best stuff." Olaf patted the 2 axes on his waist, feeling like he was the right person to take care of this matter. However, William pushed open the door again. He shook his head against the wind and snow. "No need. I'll only buy the most expensive items. I won't buy the best ones." Olaf slowly relaxed his hand that was patting the axes. He suddenly realized the world of the rich was not something he could understand. In fact, William and his companions had disguised themselves. At least the unicorn's horn was not exposed, and it did not emit a rainbow under its hooves. Annie had wrapped herself up tightly, so Olaf could not tell that she was a moonlight elf. But William did not care. His pointy ears were exposed. In this extreme north, they rarely saw pure-blooded elves. Even though William was very handsome, they only thought that he was a half-elf. Oh, that was right. He was just a half-elf. Everyone walked out of the teleportation hall. In a short period of time, the bone-chilling wind and snow made burned cinder, old leather, and Legolas teeth chatter. To the Grandmaster professionals, it was not a big deal to be minus 30 degrees Celsius. As long as they activated their battle energy shields, they would feel as warm as being in a furnace. But William, who was wearing very little, did not activate his battle energy shield either. Therefore, the other 3 could only endure the cold. Olaf glanced at the 3 who were so cold that their noses were running. They didn't even activate their battle energy shields. He suddenly said to William in a low voice, "Is there something wrong with your servants' brains? They're wearing so little on such a cold day. Their noses are freezing. Why aren't they activating their battle energy shields?" The 3 of them looked at each other. Then they saw a few professionals who were also wearing very little, but they activated their battle energy shields as they walked on the streets. All of a sudden, they felt like dying. But they were more curious. Why was Prince William not cold? Was William cold? Of course not. As he had the body of diamond, he would only feel cold if it was minus 50 degrees Celsius. But now he felt cool, of course. In the extreme north, if one did not wear thick clothing, it would be too ostentatious and unconventional. William and his companions soon arrived at a shop that was filled with leather clothing. 10 minutes later, everyone changed their clothes and walked out. William and Annie wore snow-white fox fur coats. On the other hand, Burn Cinder chose a black bear-type magical beast coat. To make it easier for him to move, Legolas chose a leather coat instead of a coat. At least, it would not affect his archery. As for Old Leather, this coquettish fellow chose a coat with a bear head on it. He squatted down. From afar, one would think that he was a polar bear. Olaf also changed into a new set of fur coats. But he stared blankly at the 5 men in front of him. No, they were gods. They were too damn rich. More than 60,000 gold coins were thrown out without even blinking an eye. They were too rich. They were inhumanely rich. They even allowed him to choose a fur coat as a gift. Oh my God, if he sold this coat, he would be able to marry 3 wives. One had to know. The Glacier Kingdom had a small population, and its economy was very backward. Even the nobles were not very rich. What advantages did they have? Were they a group of fearless berserkers who only knew how to roar and attack? But it was also because men were not afraid of death. There were more single women. That was why this old single dog had the idea of marrying a wife. Lord William. Where are we going next? To the north. To the north. Don't tell me that you're an advanced professional. Why would you be afraid of snowstorms? You're right. I'll lead the way. Chapter 356. Frost Empire. As the name suggested, half of the land of this huge empire in the north was covered by ice and snow. Of course, half of the land of the Frost Empire was in the North Temperate Zone, which could be used to grow food. Especially in a magical world, the plants here had the ability to resist heat, cold, drought, and other things that were unimaginable in the normal world. As for the civilians and professionals who lived closer to the extreme north, they could only buy food from the south or exchange their prey for food. But no matter what, for the humans in the extreme north, food was something that only the upper class could eat. Usually, they could only eat meat. It was not easy to eat meat every day. As long as one was human, one would get tired of eating meat all day long. There was very little salt here, so there was a shortage of salt. However, the environment was like this. It had been like this for tens of millions of years. No matter what, they had been able to endure it. The civilians and professionals who lived closer to the extreme north did not have the ambition to go south. They would rather kill more orcs and exchange them for food with the army. After all, in the eyes of the men in the extreme north, people could live for hundreds of years if they were powerful. If they were not powerful, they could only live for a few decades. If they could only live for a few decades, they would rather die in battle in the world of ice and snow. Why would they go to the south to suffer? Many professionals who had been to the north would complain when they returned to their hometowns. This was a rule. It was also a rule. Every day, there were rules everywhere. The bigger the city, the more rules there were. This group of fellows only had one thought in their heads. Couldn't there only be one rule? For example, if they were not happy, they would fight. The winner was the rule. After the people from the city of Dawn and Caesar Giga arrived at the Frost Empire, they bade farewell. William did not stay for long. He entered the teleportation portal and went to the northernmost part of the Frost Empire, the capital of the Frost Empire. The teleportation gate here belonged to the one closest to the extreme north. When they walked out of the teleportation portal, they found two tall warriors squatting by a brazier in the teleportation hall. Oh, they were not just warming themselves. There were also sweet potatoes, wild rabbits, and pheasants stabbed into the swords of these two fellows. Other things aside, the fragrance was quite tempting, but they did not care that their actions were seen by others because there were few rules here. They even curiously looked at William and his companion's attire. After all, even though the two guards were wearing fur-woven gloves, they were still being roasted by the flames, which was enough to show how cold it was here. But in their eyes, the five idiots know for idiots, and a silly horse would definitely be so cold that they would have to buy clothes to wear. William ignored their gazes. He walked to the back of the cold door and pushed it open. The cold wind blew. The temperature dropped by tens of degrees. The snow that looked like goose feathers floated in the air, making it difficult for people to see too far. The sky was filled with dark clouds. When they arrived, they were just in time for the arrival of the snowstorm. As people who had seen snow before, William and Annie were not too surprised by this. But Burned Cinder, Legolas, and Old Leather could not help but stare at the white stuff with their eyes wide open. They almost asked if the cotton candy was edible. Burned Cinder, Legolas, and Old Leather could not help but widen their eyes. They looked at the snowflakes and almost asked if they could eat the cotton candy. After all, the two of them knew that this group of people had very powerful equipment. This group of foreigners who came to adventure should have very strong combat strength. They should not be a match for them. Otherwise, they would have pointed at their noses and started cursing. You scolded me, and then we started fighting. Phew, it's so cool. How low is the temperature? Legolas didn't wear much. He was still in his exquisite leather armor. When he walked to the door, his breath froze, and he couldn't help but shiver. It's all right. The blizzard has just arrived, and it's only -30 to 40 degrees now. I can't say for sure in a few hours. Where are you going? One of the guards was a middle-aged man. He had a full beard, and he did not look like a good person. However, the way he leaned against the wall, looking like he was eating a sweet potato that was about to freeze, was indeed a little unrestrained and handsome. The guards did not speak. They just looked at William. His Royal Highness turned his head and chuckled. He then threw out 5 gold coins. The middle-aged man's eyes lit up. He looked as if he was saying, "You're a smart person." He caught the coins and chewed on them with his teeth. TSK, TSK. It's like pure gold. The noble is generous. He smacked his lips and glanced at the image of the city of dawn on the gold coins. Then he looked at the big tree behind him. Oh, he could not understand it, and he did not know which power it belonged to. But as long as it was gold, it would be easy. Of course, he did not forget the young warrior beside him. He passed 2 gold coins to the young warrior. The young warrior was beaming with joy. The middle-aged man placed a gold coin in the young warrior's palm and said, "Don't go to the brothel to look for women. The women there are full of lies. They talk about love, but it's all to cheat you of your money. When they earn enough money, they'll go to a warm place in the south. They'll marry honest people and live a carefree life. But you have to continue living here. I'll keep this gold coin for you. 2 years later, when you have enough money, I'll find you a wife." The young warrior dejectedly took the gold coin. He did not say anything. He squatted on the ground and continued roasting the rabbit. The guards of the City of Dawn did not comment or show any expressions. When they were outside, they had to be careful. They just had to remember everything, conversations, and even things they overheard. They could think about it when they were resting at night. But there was no need to speak or take action. Because everyone had a mission to complete, it was better to have less trouble. The middle-aged man smiled at William and said, "You're not familiar with the Glacier Kingdom, right?" "That's right. It seems that you can become a guide." William smiled. "No problem. Very few people come to the teleportation portal of the Glacier Kingdom. My nephew can take charge. Since the noble wants me to be a guide, there's no problem. You don't have to call me noble. Just call me William. What's your name?" Big Beardy, who was smiling foolishly, grinned and said 2 words, "Olaf." William nodded meaningfully. "Let's go. Bring us to buy clothes first. We could talk about other things later." "Okay, let's not talk about anything else. I know all the shops and chambers of commerce in Glacier King City very well. I can guarantee that I'll take you to the cheapest shop and buy the best stuff." Olaf patted the 2 axes on his waist, feeling like he was the right person to take care of this matter. However, William pushed open the door again. He shook his head against the wind and snow. "No need. I'll only buy the most expensive items. I won't buy the best." Olaf's hand that was patting the axes slowly relaxed. He suddenly realized the world of the rich was not something he could understand. Actually, William and the others had disguised themselves. At least the unicorn's horn was not exposed. It also did not emit rainbows under its hooves. Annie wrapped herself up tightly so that Olaf could not tell that she was a moonlight elf. But William did not care. His pointy ears were exposed. In this extreme north, they rarely saw pure-blooded elves. Even though William was very handsome, they only thought that he was a half-elf. Oh, that was right. He was just a half-elf. Everyone walked out of the teleportation hall. In a short period of time, the bone-chilling wind and snow made burned cinder, old leather, and Legolas teeth chatter. To the Grandmaster professionals, it was not a big deal to be minus 30 degrees Celsius. As long as they activated their battle energy shields, it would be as warm as being in a furnace. But William, who was also wearing very little, did not activate his battle energy shield either. Therefore, the other 3 could only endure the cold. Olaf glanced at the 3 who were freezing and did not activate their battle energy shields. He suddenly said to William in a low voice, "Are your servants crazy? They're wearing so little on such a cold day. Their snot is freezing. Why aren't they activating their battle energy shields?" The 3 of them looked at each other. Then they saw a few professionals who were also wearing very little, but they activated their battle energy shields as they walked on the streets. They suddenly felt like dying, but they were more curious. Why was Prince William not cold? Was William cold? Of course not. As he had the body of diamond, He would only feel cold if it was minus 50 degrees Celsius. But now he felt cool, of course. In the extreme north, if one did not wear thick clothing, it would be too ostentatious and unconventional. William and his companions soon arrived at a shop that was filled with leather clothing. 10 minutes later, everyone changed their clothes and walked out. William and Annie wore snow-white fox fur coats. On the other hand, Burnsinder chose a black bear-type magical beast coat. To make it easier for him to move, Legolas chose a leather coat instead of a coat. At least, it would not affect his archery. As for Old Leather, this coquettish fellow chose a coat with a bear head on it. He squatted down. From afar, one would think that he was a polar bear. Olaf also changed into a new set of fur coats. But he looked at the 5 men in front of him in a daze. No, they were gods. They were too damn rich. More than 60,000 gold coins were thrown out without even blinking an eye. They were too rich. They were inhumanely rich. They even allowed him to choose a fur coat as a gift. Oh my God, if this dress were to be sold, it would be enough for him to marry 3 wives. One had to know. The Glacier Kingdom had a small population, and its economy was very backward. Even the nobles were not very rich. What advantages did they have? Were they a group of fearless berserkers who only knew how to roar and attack? But it was also because men were not afraid of death. There were more single women. That was why this old single dog had the idea of marrying a wife. Lord William, where are we going next? To the north. To the north. Don't tell me that you're an advanced professional. Why would you be afraid of snowstorms? You're right. I'll lead the way. Chapter 357. A violent snowstorm filled the sky. The sky was silvery white, and not a trace of sunlight could be seen. If not for the tall buildings in the capital that could block the wind, there would not be any professionals strolling on the streets. William looked into the distance. The entire city was covered in snow. Besides the black smoke that came out of the chimneys, he thought that there were not many households in the capital. Of course, the capital of the Glacier Kingdom did not have a large population. At most, there were about 500,000 people. Most of the population lived outside the city. They did not like to work, and they preferred a free life. For example, hunting. No matter if it was an ordinary animal or a magical beast, as long as they saw it, they would not let it go. If that was not possible, they could kill a few orcs to exchange for food. But, under the temperature of the snowstorm, as long as the civilians were not working indoors, they would hide at home and drink wine. Wine. In the extreme north, wine was sold more than food, and it was more expensive. But there were many people who bought it. The men in the extreme north cursed all day long, but they had no choice but to take out gold coins and throw them to the wine vendors. They had the intention of robbing, but they were afraid that after robbing, this group of foreign merchants would not come. Then, they would not even have wine to drink. So the wine made from food was far more of a necessity for the people in the extreme north than food. Basically, with wine, even if there was no food to eat, it was not a big problem. There was no food to eat, but they could not go without wine. Even if they starved to death, they would starve to death in a drunken state. If the distance between the two places was not too far, William would have opened a teleportation portal and come here to sell wine. But he had no choice. It was cold. It was too cold. It was uncomfortable to warm up without wine. However, on a day when the wind was howling and it was snowing heavily, there were 6 people and 1 horse. Facing the bone-chilling north wind, they galloped even further north. It was minus 50 degrees Celsius. The wind was very strong. If it was an ordinary person, he would have been blown away by the strong wind. He could enjoy the feeling of flying. William also felt the cold, but it did not mean that his body could not withstand the cold. Don't mention unicorns. The 5 Grandmasters and Olaf, a local advanced berserker, were not a problem in the face of such a snowstorm. It was just that he walked further and further away. It seemed more and more like he was walking toward a place off the beaten track. Olaf, on the other hand, was a little terrified. But on second thought, what was there to be afraid of? There were 5 Grandmasters. How could they rob him on the way? He only had 4 gold coins in his pocket. Even the new coat was bought by him on the way. What was there to worry about? That was all the way north, braving the wind and snow. They walked from noon to dusk. They finally saw a small city. The steel gates were wide open. Not only were the streets empty, but there was also no one guarding the city walls. It was like a ghost town. However, the walls of the glacial kingdom were very thick. The soldiers could stay inside the walls to keep warm while secretly observing. None of the city guards came out, which meant that they were not in any danger. There was no one on the streets because the commoners were all at home. At least, many chimneys were emitting black smoke. Olaf glanced at the darkening sky and could not help but say, "This city is the northernmost city of the glacial kingdom. Whether you want to continue north or not, it's best for us to stay here. The temperature will plummet after dark, and I feel that the snowstorm will be even more intense." William patted the fur on his body, and the snowflakes fell off. He nodded and said, "Okay, what's further north?" "The Northern Grand Duchy. It's the last human nation near the north. It's also the first line of defense against the Orc Empire. The Frost Empire, the Glacial Kingdom, and the Snow Kingdom have stationed many legions in the Northern Grand Duchy to defend against the harassment and attacks of the Orcs." Olaf explained in detail. Since William had asked, it was almost obvious that they had the intention to go to the Northern Grand Duchy. As for what they were going to do, he did not know. But no matter what, Olaf was very confident in the defensibility of the Northern Grand Duchy. He was not worried that William would cause trouble. He just thought that they wanted to see the scale of the Orc army. Because hundreds of years ago, there was no Northern Grand Duchy to the north of the Glacial Kingdom. The person who had established the Northern Grand Duchy was a duke of the Frost Empire. This powerful, titled epic expert led thousands of troops to conquer the east and west. He rapidly expanded the territory of the Frost Empire and killed hundreds of thousands of orcs, seizing the territory. And from then on, the Frost Empire bestowed this territory to him and conferred him the title of King of the Northern Grand Duchy. Meanwhile, in order to defend against the counterattack of the Orc Empire, the Frost Empire not only sent legions to support, but the two affiliated kingdoms also sent many legions. Of course, there were also many mercenaries and hunters here. More than 200,000 soldiers were stationed in the Northern Grand Duchy. They formed the first line of defense against the Orc Empire. Not only were these legions powerful, but the legion commanders were also famous warriors. William had some understanding of this, but it was limited to what he knew from the books in the library. Because in his previous life, the Northern Grand Duchy was gone. Whether it was the legions or the commoners, more than 2 million people died in a curse. The curse spread very quickly. People could not react at all. When the Frost Empire sent a legendary great enchanter here, only a group of dying professionals were left. But before the great enchanter could find a way to break the curse, those professionals died tragically under the curse. William thought to himself, other than that, there's still 1 month before the curse explodes. If I find the source of the curse before a month, I might be able to solve this crisis. William stroked his chin. He was not here for the reward of the Frost Empire. After all, he did not know how terrifying the curse was in advance. The Frost Empire would not give him any reward, but he was here for the reward of the system mission. But if I can't find the source of the curse within 20 days, I have to leave this place. William had made up his mind. He could do whatever he wanted, but he could not risk his life here. The professionals who had died from this curse were not only grandmasters, but also titled epic experts. This was enough to show how powerful this curse was. This curse is not the curse of the goddess of bad luck. It is a fatal curse. Otherwise, I could do whatever I want. William could not help but feel a little sad. The group quickly found a place to stay. In this extreme north, other than some of the higher-class hotels in the Glacier Kingdom, in these small cities, it was considered a good room if it could keep warm. The unicorn shamelessly followed Annie into the hotel. It was a pity. Under William's gaze, it was dragged into the stable by the tavern owner. Fortunately, there was a stove in the stable. Annie glanced at the unicorn worriedly, but when William called her, she quickly forgot about it after a while. The tavern owner came back from outside. He patted the snow off his body and said while shivering, "That horse is really strong. I almost lost to it. It should be a magical beast. It seems to understand human nature. But there are 6 of you. But there are only 5 good rooms. 2 of you need to stay together. 5 rooms it is. That's fine. 5 superior rooms that are warm, have no leakage, and have enough wooden pipes. The stables with their own furnaces are free of charge. Just give me 2 gold coins. 5 gold coins. Bring out the best food in your area. Do you have magical beast meat? William suddenly asked. Yes, yes, yes. Wait for me. I guarantee that it will be the best wine and food. The middle-aged tavern owner took the gold coins and nodded with a smile. He quickly called out to his wife and asked her to prepare food and wine. Olaf looked at the tavern owner who had turned to leave. He could not help but say, "How can there be food and wine worth 5 gold coins in this small city? Even magical beast meat is very cheap." William smiled. It's just some worldly possessions. You don't have to pay too much attention to them. As long as you act as my guide for 30 days, I'll give you 10 magical stones in return. What do you think? What's that? Olaf was startled. Just as William was about to raise the price, Olaf shook his head. You can keep that for yourself. Give me 1,000 gold coins. Not to mention 30 days, I'll give you 3 years. Burned Cinder, Legolas, and Old Leather could not help but frown. You are so cheap. You don't want the more expensive magical stones? You can sell yourself for 3 years for 1,000 gold coins? It was not that Olaf did not know the value of the magical stones. He sighed and said, "The magical stones are good, but in this stupid place, gold coins are the most practical thing. I don't want to sell the magical stones. But if I want to train myself, how can 10 magical stones be enough?" William pondered and said, "All right, we'll talk about it later. So, how do we allocate the rooms?" William asked. Instantly, swish, 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 a few figures flashed past. Burned Cinder, Legolas, and Old Leather each chose a superior room. Olaf glanced at Annie, who was admiring the interior decorations. He glanced at William and said, "My lord, why don't you stay with me?" William's knuckles cracked. Olaf nodded and turned to leave. Subsequently, William patted Annie's shoulder and said, "It's over. There's only 1 room left. We can only stay together." Oh, Annie, who was like a little penguin, pushed his hand away. She turned her head and suddenly said, "I feel that you have ulterior motives." "Nope, not at all. All right, you can't sleep on the bed." William was expressionless. It was such cold weather, and she didn't want him to sleep on the bed? "I'm just joking, hee. I knew that Annie wouldn't want me to freeze." Chapter 358. It was a windy night. Ahem. There was only wind and snow, but no moonlight. In short, the night passed quickly. The next morning, the snowstorm disappeared completely, leaving behind a cloudless sky. When the first ray of sunlight appeared, boundless whiteness filled everyone's vision, and they felt like they were going to be blinded. After all, in the real world and the God's world, as long as one was an ordinary person, he or she had a chance of obtaining the snow blindness certificate. William forcefully pushed open the window on the 2nd floor and took a deep breath of air. The cool and refreshing air greeted him. The air here had a different kind of freshness. The arrival of the snowstorm seemed to have brought more magic. Because Annie had meditated on her bed for the whole night, William had never trained before. He did not know if training would make people feel more relaxed the next day. But it seemed like it was not the case. Annie did not sleep at night. She was so sleepy that she did not even eat breakfast. After William woke up, she crawled into the warm bed and slept. William looked at her sleeping appearance and let her sleep for a while. He would set off in the afternoon. There was no hurry. William had plenty of time, although he said that he would use a month to search for mission information. If he was lucky, he would encounter it soon. If he was unlucky, everything would be for naught. Then Annie, who had the highest luck, wanted to sleep. Of course, it was to let her sleep. In short, after arriving at the extreme north, Annie's was the lighthouse of William's life. He would follow her wherever she wanted him to go. As for using this metaphysical method to search for mission clues, would it work? Why not ask the goddess of luck how she became a god? The goddess of luck and the goddess of misfortune were 2 of the few gods who had not died. They could not be incompetent. Even Moses had said that luck and misfortune were magic that he had just come into contact with. That would prove it. Luck was also a kind of endowment or a kind of magic that could be learned. But it was too difficult. It was difficult for ordinary people to try. First, one had to have the endowment. Moses seemed to have successfully reached the threshold because of his endowment of one luck. It would be difficult for William to learn luck magic. If he could get along well with the goddess of misfortune, he might be able to learn some misfortune magic. It was noon. The group left the snow-covered town. Olaf continued to lead them north after Annie pointed out the direction casually. In fact, the snowstorm last night was too strong. The road, which wasn't much to begin with, was now completely covered in pure white snow. William and the others could not walk at all, so they had no choice but to fly all the way north. Until then, Olaf was completely shocked. That was because the white horse that had been frozen for an entire night was actually a unicorn with wings and rainbows under its feet. These guys actually have such a magical animal following them. Where did they come from? But then again, can I say that the girl on the unicorn's back is definitely a virgin? Olaf suddenly froze. He took a few glances at the handsome prince and said, "TSK, TSK, you can even endure this. You're not a man." Of course, Olaf was just attacking with his eyes. William did not know. Even if he knew, he wouldn't care. He was not the kind of person to haggle over every ounce. Hence, after flying for tens of miles, they arrived at a small town. Then they flew down from the sky, giving the panting Olaf a chance to catch his breath. If it was the first time that an advanced expert had come into contact with flying, their speed and endurance were not very high. Then, a grandmaster could fly for a long time. They could not fly yesterday. Of course, it was because of the snowstorm. But when they came to their senses, they realized that this town was very strange. For a town that relied on hunting for a living, there was not even a dog barking. Something was not right, right? Although the snow on the streets had been cleared, many places still revealed pitch-black traces. William could tell that the traces were black blood. Of course, it did not mean that there was no one in this town. Many timid commoners hid in their houses and secretly observed through the cracks of the doors and windows. Only the local garrison came out, which was a small team of soldiers. One of them, a middle-aged man, asked respectfully, "Are you the demon hunters invited by Erat?" Erat? Olaf was about to reply, but he turned to look at William. Coincidentally, when the prince flew all the way here, he happened to see a beginner professional frozen to death by the blizzard. William took out the frozen corpse from the space ring. Many people exclaimed. Even some commoners who were hiding in their houses could not help but come out and look at Erat's corpse. A burly middle-aged woman used the lion's roar. Erat was frozen in the snowstorm yesterday. His wife is here to collect his corpse. Her voice traveled far. It was extremely penetrating. It was not any softer than the voices of some professionals. But this type of town was like this. As long as there was a person with a loud enough voice, he could act as the town's megaphone. If there was anything, he could shout. With such a loud voice, the town instantly became lively. Many people came out and were no longer afraid of this group of professionals who could fly. Actually, there was no other way. There were only so many people in the town. Everyone was either relatives or friends. Not to mention the strange things that had happened in the past few days. This was the first time someone had died. "Thank you, my lord, for returning Erat's corpse. I please accept this money." The captain of the town's garrison quickly took out some silver coins from his pocket and asked for some from other soldiers. He was about to send them to William. No matter what, he did not believe that Erat would die in the hands of someone who possessed a space treasure. Many people were worried that Erat would go to the big city to look for the demon hunters yesterday. They said that it would be better for him to go the next day because the snowstorm was coming. But this stubborn fellow said that he was a child of the world of ice and snow, so he would not freeze to death. However, it was too late to say anything now. He was already cold. He was completely cold. If he had not died on the hill, his corpse would have been completely buried by the snow. William rejected these people's good intentions. He was just doing it out of convenience. He asked curiously, what happened to the town? Where did the blood come from? And what strange thing happened that made Mr. Erat brave the danger of the snowstorm to look for the demon hunters for help? It's a long story, but I think that my lord was just passing by. Time is precious, so I'll make it short. A monster appeared in the town and killed many of the hunters' reindeer, hunting dogs, poultry, and livestock. The captain of the garrison said briefly. William and the rest were speechless. You really made it short. How could I make a judgment with just a few words? Not even a mission popped up. Thus, William, who was wearing a white fox fur coat, continued to smile. You can explain in detail. We're not in a rush. If possible, I can even help you solve this problem. Really? The kind that doesn't require money? The middle-aged woman who had shouted just now appeared again and asked. Yes, it doesn't require money. After all, my heart is for justice and light. Before he could finish speaking, the middle-aged woman pushed the captain away and shouted, let me say. Hunter, move aside. It's hard for the Lord to make you speak. Move aside. It's like this. A month ago, Atlas came back from hunting in the forest in the west. He was amazing that day. He hunted a magical beast. What's it called? Polar bear. Hunter, the captain of the team, interrupted. The middle-aged woman nodded again. Yes. It's a big bear with white fur. It's alive. Oh my God, it's alive. It's coming to take revenge on us, as she spoke. The middle-aged woman pointed behind William and was about to run away in panic. Everyone turned to look. Old Leather was squatting in a corner, smoking a pipe with a man in his 60s, but from the back, the makeup on his body really made him look no different from Polar Bear. Hunter sighed. He ignored the middle-aged woman who ran away and said, logically speaking, Arat is only a beginner professional. He doesn't have the ability to hunt such a powerful magical beast. The people here guessed that he must have stolen the polar bear from a monster's mouth. But in order to prove his strength, Arat went to kill another polar bear in a fit of pique. In the end, he never returned, and we thought he had died there. It wasn't until 7 days ago that he came back from the forest in a sorry state. At this point, Hunter revealed a horrified expression and continued narrating. But ever since then, he has been muttering all day. We thought that he seemed to have encountered something strange, but we didn't dare to ask him. And strange things started to happen in the town. The reindeer, hunting dogs, and even some horses of the commoners died for no reason. At first, some people thought that these things should have frozen to death, so they might as well eat them. But when they let out their blood, they found that the reindeer and horses had black blood in their bodies. What's more terrifying is that the dead animals actually came back to life, including that polar bear. But these creatures that came back to life didn't have much fighting power. We killed them. William raised his eyebrows. Were any of you injured? No, Hunter said decisively. But the gaze of a soldier beside him was erratic. He didn't dare to continue looking at William and the others. There's so much information, but there's still no mission notification. Could Annie be that lucky? William seemed to have thought of something. He had discovered the source of the curse when he came here. So William continued to say, don't worry. If you have any injuries, tell me immediately. I'll help you. Otherwise, if you get infected by this black blood, you will definitely become a dark creature. You will become a monster that only knows how to kill. When Hunter heard this, he was a little hesitant. But looking at William's expression, it was obvious that William was not the kind of person who would lie. He clenched his fists and pulled the young soldier beside him over. With a pitiful expression, he pleaded, my lord, save him. He's still young. He's only 20 years old. He's very talented. He can even become an advanced professional. Please don't let him die. The young man did not speak. When he saw this scene, he gritted his teeth and tore open the clothes on his chest, exposing it to the cold air. As expected, a pitch-black bite mark appeared on his chest. It was the bite mark of a hound, but his wound was not blood red. It had turned black, and it seemed to be spreading faster. Half of his chest had turned black. When they saw this scene, many commoners had dispersed in fear. They looked strangely at the young man they were once familiar with. William raised his eyebrows. He only knew that the curse had turned the Snow Grand Duchy into a deadly enemy, and many terrifying creatures had appeared. But in his previous life, he had not been to the Snow Grand Duchy. After all, the legendary continent was too big, and there were many missions. He had not been to every place. But he did not dare to confirm that it was a virus. He did not dare to touch it. Instead, he put on the gloves that Moses had given him. He took out a small spoon and squeezed some black blood from the rotten wound. His Royal Highness used insight. It showed that it was unknown. He moved his nose closer and sniffed. He glanced at the information panel, but there were no changes. He was not infected. It was not airborne. That's not right. If it's not an airborne curse, how can it spread so quickly? How can it cause the entire Grand Duchy of the North to fall and fill this land with poisonous fog? William could not help but ponder. It had to be known. The Grand Duchy of the North had two titled epic warriors. There were at least tens of Grandmaster professionals. Even those legions had the lowest combat power of intermediate professionals. There were countless advanced professionals. After all, this was the first line of defense against the Orc Empire. They were much stronger than the City of Dawn. If it was really a contact-like infection, in the face of hard power, it would not spread like a zombie virus. When the epic experts attacked, no matter what kind of plaything you were, it would all turn into ashes with ease. Is my train of thought wrong? This is not about the curse, but a new mission? William pondered seriously. It seemed that the young man in front of him was afraid. The more afraid he was, the more worried he became. His heart beat faster. The black blood on his chest was like a spiderweb. It continued to spread, and the rate of spreading increased. Burned Cinder coughed lightly as a reminder. William pressed down on the young man's head. He ignored the gazes of the others and stuffed something into the young man's mouth. Everyone felt the aura of life appear. The wounds on the young man's body rapidly recovered. Even the black blood gradually turned into the original red blood. A few seconds later, the young man took a deep breath. He could not help but look at William. He almost knelt on the ground to thank William for saving his life. Hunter recovered from his shock. He thought that the demon hunter in front of him was going to kill him. The prince ignored everyone's gratitude. He just wanted to use one drop of the water of life to gain enough favorability in an attempt to get more information about the quest. So he continued to ask, "Tell me, have you seen what that monster looks like?" No, that monster moved very quickly. We couldn't even see his shadow. But this place is covered in snow. We can tell from the footprints that he is a monster that walks on four legs. He is not small, and each of his claws has 4 sharp claws. But I don't know why he doesn't attack humans. He doesn't attack humans. He crawls on 4 legs with 4 sharp claws. He doesn't eat anything. His blood turns black, and he emits poisonous fog. Curse. Instant death? When everything appeared at the same time, William suddenly thought of something. The dark world. Abyss creatures. Space overlapping. William's expression changed. D***MN. He could not afford to offend this mission. He had to quickly escape and send a message to the Frost Empire. They did not care if they came, because this was not a curse. Instead, in the future, the 2 spaces would overlap. Otherwise, the matter of the faint poisonous fog would not be explained. As for this kind of overlapping space, it would happen continuously in the later stages of the game. However, the records were very clear, so William would not be at a loss. Chapter 359. Why didn't the Abyss creatures eat? Why did they kill the animals? Was it because of the distortion of human nature or the loss of morality? Ahem. When the spaces overlapped, some characteristics would occur. That was, when creatures from another dimension dealt damage to you, you wouldn't suffer any damage if you were in your original world. Only when the 2 spaces were completely merged. Then you would realize how tragic the death of the animals in front of you was. And these animals could be resurrected after they died. William could not help but think of a certain Abyss creature. That was the Abyss brain-sucking monster. This kind of 4-legged monster had very strong, explosive power. They did not like to eat flesh and blood. Instead, they spat out sharp thorns from their mouths and pierced the enemy's head to suck the brain juice and marrow. But no matter what, in such a situation where the spaces overlapped and were very unstable, no matter what kind of injury, no wound could be detected. Thinking of this, William did not intend to stay any longer. He wanted to inform the Frost Empire and then leave. After all, there was a condition for the overlapping spaces. That was the surface world and the inner world. The gods' continent belonged to the surface world, while the Abyss belonged to the inner world. The creatures of these two worlds were the original inhabitants. As for the so-called dark world, it belonged to the intermediate world between the surface world and the inner world. Because many devils knew that they were also very afraid of some monsters in the abyss world, but at the same time, they would also use the abyss creatures. For example, when William faced the Blood Moon Dark Witch, he encountered an abyss octopus monster. The overlapping spaces meant that there was a spatial problem in the surface world and the inner world. William guessed, even as early as the mythological era, there should be many overlapping spaces between the surface world and the inner world. The mythological era should be the era when the gods led the other races to fight against the abyss creatures. The bathtub octopus that William encountered on Stormy Island was one of the abyss creatures. It was also an abyss creature left behind from the gods' era. But the mythological era was definitely not the era when the gods fell. That was when the gods showed their greatness and their great power. In the mythological era, the gods were the strongest beings that all races submitted to. There was a long gap between the mythological era and the dragon era. It was during that period of time that the gods fell one after another. William wanted to know what happened during that period, but no one told him. Even though he had tried to beat around the bush with Moses, Moses had completely ignored his questions. When the space overlaps, the laws of the two worlds will collide and mutate. It's very likely that many abyssal creatures will appear on this land. But according to the records of the Darkness Incident, there weren't many abyssal creatures in this land. In other words, the space had not completely fused. Due to the collision of the two worlds' laws, there was a huge change. That was why the living beings of the Grand Duchy of the North, and even the creatures of the abyss, suffered irreversible damage, which was the so-called curse. This is the key reason why this land has become a land of death. William thought of this and immediately waved his hand. Let's go back. Everyone was stunned. Didn't you say you wanted to come here? Why are you changing your mind now? On the other hand, the commoners in the town were quite unhappy. Their expressions were quite ugly. Didn't they just say that they would help them deal with that monster? Now, they were going to run away. Although they were a little unhappy, they did not dare to instruct these powerful professionals who could fly. They just had a lot of complaints in their hearts. William glanced at the residents of the town and Hunter. He bluntly said, "If I were you, I would bring the entire village and immediately head to the city tens of kilometers away in the south. Perhaps we can save our lives. I won't say much. It's up to you whether you believe me or not." Leave? Hunter could not help but glance at the others. How was it possible? Everyone had lived in their hometown for generations. How could they leave just because of a few words from William? William glanced at him and did not say anything else. It was up to them whether they wanted to leave or not. William had done his best. There was no need to tie them up and take them away. Then, he let Annie ride on the unicorn and immediately led everyone back to where they came from. Meanwhile, under the puzzled gazes of everyone, he took out a transmission scroll and sent a message to Caesar Zero War, who was in the Frost Empire. I wanted to go to the Grand Duchy of the North to see how powerful the Orc Empire was. But after arriving here, I accidentally encountered many abyss creatures. I discovered that the space was extremely unstable. Even the space magic scroll I had with me is malfunctioning. I'm almost certain that something strange has happened here. Please help me inform the higher-ups of the Frost Empire. It's best to send a space enchanter or great enchanter to investigate. Not long after, Caesar Zero War replied, "It's a small problem. I'm in a meeting with the royal family of the Frost Empire. I'll convey your message to the Frost Emperor. If the crisis you mentioned is true, the success rate of my meeting this time should be much higher." William looked at the transmission scroll and smiled. He did not say anything else. Caesar Zero War's meaning was obvious. This information was very important to him. At the same time, he would let William show his face in front of the Frost Emperor. If the meeting was successful, there would be great benefits. In short, William seemed to be giving Caesar Zero War a lot of benefits, but it was a win-win situation. Because he did not know anyone in the Frost Empire, he did not have the right to speak. Even if he had the identity of the Blackleaf Elven Prince, no one would pay much attention to him if he revealed the overlapping spaces. It was better to let Caesar's zero war convey the message. No matter what political issues Caesar discussed in the Frost Empire, if he could save the Grand Duchy of the North, it would increase his bargaining chips in the political negotiations. But the prince did not mention the problem of overlapping dimensions. It was also because this situation had never happened again after the mythological era. Except for some old guys who liked to dig up history, they would not think of this point. But the Space Enchanter and Great Enchanter would definitely be able to detect many problems. Of course, the overlapping spaces were not something they could settle. It required a sage to take action. But as long as the space mages discovered an abnormality and knew that they could not settle it, they would naturally inform the sage. Even if this group of guys wanted to be greedy and wanted to settle it themselves, they would make a mistake. That was not William's problem. He had done enough and said what he needed to say. Whether the 2 million people of the Grand Duchy of the North survived or not was the matter of the Frost Empire. In any case, the Frost Empire had to give William some benefits as a reward. As soon as they arrived, they turned around and flew until they were outside the Grand Duchy of the North. William said in a deep voice, "Now, take a detour to the Frost Forest. You want to go to the Snow Elves?" Olaf could not help but ask. William nodded. "Yes, do you not know the way?" "Yes, but that place is colder and more dangerous." Olaf sighed. The latitude of the Frost Forest was much closer to the north than the Grand Duchy of the North. The Snow Elves lived further north, where the Orc Empire, behemoths, giant frost dragons, and frost giants lived. And the giant frost dragons had many names. Shameful white dragons, shame of the dragon race. Weak white dragons, fat frost otaku. In conclusion, white dragons were very noob. They lived in the extreme north and attacked all kinds of magical beasts, fish, and even orcs all day long. They liked to freeze everything and hide it in the ice, cave to eat slowly. Only the magical world did not have the Little Tyrant game console. Otherwise, the white dragons would definitely tell you that they could play in the ice cave for 10,000 years. But they were also food for the behemoths and frost giants. Of course, the white dragons and frost giants were evenly matched. The enemies they were most afraid of were the behemoths, although the behemoths could not fly. But the dodging ability of this group of stupid white dragons was very average. In front of the powerful behemoths, they would often be hit by artificial catapults and fall on the snowy mountains with screams. The subsequent situation was very obvious. The behemoths would beat them up and drag their tails home for dinner. The extreme north was a very cold place, but it was also a very lively place. The Orc Empire was surrounded by enemies. The white dragons wanted to eat them. The behemoths were unhappy with them, and the frost giants would occasionally capture some orcs as slaves. The human nation had more than 200,000 soldiers in the north to defend against the orcs' invasion. The Snow Elves in the Frost Forest were also very reckless. In this icy and snowy environment, they would occasionally rush out to fight with them. If not for the millions of devils in the Orc Empire, it would have been destroyed by the humans' Frost Empire. In particular, there were many freshwater lakes and even the endless ice sea in the north. The creatures in the sea below the ice surface were resources and food that they could obtain. Moreover, no one said that plants could not grow in a world of ice and snow. For example, in the Frost Forest, many plants that could only grow in a cold environment grew there. Although there was often a thin layer of ice on the surface of those plants, it still did not affect their continuous growth. These plants were the food of many herbivores and magical beasts. They also supported many carnivorous magical beasts. Everyone flew all the way. Time passed very quickly. After exhausting Olaf to the point of being half dead, William and the others had not only left the Grand Duchy of the North, they also came to the edge of the Frost Forest. But here, everyone looked at the endless white forest and felt a little lost. Olaf also said at this moment, "I know where the Frost Forest is, but I don't know where the Snow Elves come from. You don't have to worry about that. Just follow me." William narrowed his eyes. He wanted to come here not only because of the dark events in the Grand Duchy of the North. It was the Blackleaf Elven King who had ordered him to come here. That was right. William was the real prince of the Blackleaf Elves. He had finally come to the path of being ordered to come here. I can't help it. I'm the only outstanding and good-looking Blackleaf Elves among the younger generation. William laughed. He took out the box in his hand. This was what the Blackleaf Elven King had asked him to send. Although William did not open the box, he did not know what was inside. But he had a feeling. The Elven King seemed to be looking for an heir. Gosh, a transmigrator can become the Elven King. It seems that I'm one step closer to the peak of my life. Chapter 360. In this northernmost land where it often snowed, if they walked, it would be very difficult, because humans did not have furry feet like animals. They could walk in the soft snow, unless they increased the area of contact between their feet and the snow. But William and the others could fly close to the ground. Not only could they avoid encountering large magical beasts, but they could also pay attention to some traces on the snow. Olaf pointed at the snow-white trees around them. As the guide, he said, "Don't be fooled by the snow-white crystals on the surface of these trees, flowers and flowers. These crystals are produced in their bodies to protect them from the cold. They are still growing." Cinder and the others looked up at the snow-white trees that were tens of meters tall and even hundreds of meters tall. They also looked at the scattered flowers and grass around them. Obviously, this frost forest was definitely not able to grow to such a state in the short 3 months of warm season. Olaf continued, "Actually, if you use a knife to peel off the white crystals on the surface, you will see the green twigs inside. But when the herbivores and magical beasts eat the plants, they will spit out many white crystals because they cannot be used. And these trees are called the snow trees in the ice plains. Originally, they were very valuable. But this is the territory of the snow elves, so no one dares to cut down trees here. You seem to know a lot." William pursed his lips. In the past, he had been the one to popularize science. Now, someone was stealing his business. Olaf shrugged. "I used to be the scout captain of the Grand Duchy of the Northern region. When dealing with the orcs in the north, I would often go to the frost forest in the east to look for food. So, I am more familiar with it." "How did you end up like this?" William raised his eyebrows. Actually, he still had high hopes for Olaf. A guy with epic bloodline would not end up as a guard. At the very least, he should be a guard captain. Olaf pondered for 2 seconds and said, "Inadvertently alerting the enemy and violating military orders. It's a light punishment if you don't die." "It's indeed a light punishment." William nodded in agreement. For a lord of his position, a rash scout like Olaf was clearly not up to standard. But then again, Olaf was a berserker and a scout captain, so he shouldn't have made such a low-level mistake. Thus, Olaf laughed bitterly and continued, "That's why I took the risk of violating military orders, but I still couldn't save the town where I was born and raised. I could only watch helplessly as my son, wife, family, and friend were all killed by the orcs. Moreover, I've been demoted to become a guard of Glacier King City's teleportation gate. From now on, I won't have the chance to seek revenge on those orcs." William was speechless. He had disobeyed military orders for his family. Who was right and who was wrong? Although military orders were absolute. But in that kind of situation, except for a few people who regarded general orders as more important than the sky, basically everyone would disregard everything to save people. However, Olaf immediately smiled and said, "But I have another son, the guard who was with me at the door. His father was originally my brother, but he died in battle. Before he died, he asked me to take care of his orphan and widowed mother, so I married his wife. Although my son isn't my biological son, and he never calls me father, it's enough that his mother is mine." William was speechless. He thought that this was a sad story, but in the end, it was a F***king story where he could die in peace and sleep with his wife and children. Just as William was cursing in his heart, an earth-shattering roar sounded. Then, a broken tree flew across the sky and smashed heavily in front of them. When Olaf saw this scene, he wanted to turn around and leave. He was a berserker. He was not afraid of death, but he didn't want to die. But William's expression lit up, and he immediately waved his hand. "There seems to be a battle between magical beasts. Let's go over and see if we can benefit from it." "This isn't a battle between magical beasts. It should be a frost giant or a behemoth. But why are they here? We can't go. Olaf hurriedly pulled William back. Don't worry. I'm not asking you to stand in front. What are you afraid of? After William finished speaking, he quickly approached the place. It was just a few hundred meters away. Everyone saw 3 frost giants that were 7 to 8 meters tall. They wore brass armor, and their skin was ice blue. They had a huge shield in their left hand and a huge axe in their right hand. There were also 2 long horns on their helmets. And the obvious thing was, the 3 frost giants were all males because their white beards were very long. As for their opponents, it was not a white dragon. Instead, it was a behemoth with long brown hair. This gigantic creature was 13 meters tall. Its muscles were bulging. It seemed to be filled with endless power, and it had 2 protruding fangs in its mouth. At this moment, this behemoth seemed to be in a berserk state. It roared and charged forward. Like a humanoid mecha, it ran on the snowy ground and used its strong body to break thick trees. Then, with exaggerated strength, it punched 2 frost giants. In the next second, he abruptly kicked out with his foot. Bang! The frost giant with the longest beard left a mark on the snowy ground. Before he could straighten his back, the behemoth punched him again and knocked him down. Riding on the frost giant's body, the 5 of them joined their fists together and hammered the frost giant. The loud bangs, accompanied by the tremors of the earth, spread in all directions. Very soon, the frost giant with the longest beard could not take it anymore, even though his shield was blocked in front of him. But cracks appeared on the huge shield, and there were even traces of dents. He knew that if he continued to be hit, he might die. Slash him! The frost giant could not take it anymore and roared. Hence, the other 2 frost giants did not hold back anymore. They took out their 5-meter-long axes and slashed at the back of the behemoth. Uft. 2 streams of blood spurted out. The 1-meter-long axes pierced deep into the flesh of the behemoth. But this kind of injury not only did not cause it to be seriously injured, but it made it even more violent. The behemoth did not wait for the 2 frost giants to retract their axes. It struggled to stand up and let the axes fall out of their hands. But it opened its big mouth and grabbed the handles of the 2 axes with both hands and pulled them hard. Rip! A piece of flesh and blood was torn off, and the behemoth opened its blood-red eyes, looked at the axes that were still in its hands, and roared again. Damn, cut off his head, are you idiots? The frost giant leader saw this scene and was a bit confused. The behemoth knew martial arts. Who could stop it? But the other 2 frost giants said in a muffled voice, Aren't the frost giants never enemies with the behemoth? We can't kill it. Then what should we do? Let it hammer me to death. This frost giant leader was also a bit angry. They just came to the frost forest to catch a few magical beasts to eat. In the end, they saw a wounded behemoth running over from afar. They wanted to say hello, but this behemoth just fiercely hammered them. There was no communication at all. Of course, the behemoth could not speak in the first place, but this kind of creature was intelligent. Generally, it could only roar around. But the frost giants and the behemoth had an agreement to never hurt each other. But it was different now. This behemoth had a mental problem. If they did not get rid of it, they would be dead. At this moment, this behemoth's head seemed to be bent a bit, but as it shook its head, it rushed up again with its 2 axes. Bang, 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 bang. Sparks flew everywhere. The 2 axes slashed wildly. If the frost giants hadn't used their shields to resist, they would basically be dead. But as a giant white condor flew across the sky, 3 nimble figures descended from the sky. Before they were about to land, their speed plummeted, allowing them to stand on tree branches. 2 of them threw out 2 magic ropes, instantly entangling the legs of the behemoth, and the other kept releasing ice magic, trying to freeze the behemoth. However, the crazy behemoth was too fierce, as it exerted force with its legs. The 2 snow elves hugging the tree were directly thrown away, just as the behemoth was about to trample the 2 to death. William finally stopped hiding. He transformed into a ray of lightning and moved close to the ground. Before the behemoth's fist landed on the ground, he suddenly swung his left hand. Bang! There was a loud sound. The 10-meter-tall behemoth's head was hit hard, and its huge body fell heavily to the ground. The frost giants and the snow elves stretched their necks, dumbfounded. But even so, the behemoth still struggled to stand up. William stood on its chest and punched it again. Bang! The behemoth's head heavily hit the ground. The entire surface of the earth trembled. As the electric current spread in all directions, the snow within a radius of a few hundred meters turned into snow water. Only then did the behemoth completely faint. At this moment, William took off the white hood on his head, revealing his pointy ears. He touched his undamaged gloves and smiled at the others. It's not dead. This big guy is still alive. Gulp. A few snow elves gulped. One of the female elves, who used ice magic, looked at William in surprise. She was puzzled and asked, "Are you a Blackleaf elf?" "Greetings, I'm William Blackleaf. I'm here on the orders of the Blackleaf Elven King." "Greetings, Prince William." The three Grandmaster Snow Elves nodded. Burncinder and the others walked behind William. They smiled and nodded at him, indicating that they were together. The leader of the Frost Giants used his leg to kick the behemoth. When he saw the behemoth's flattened face, he could not help but look at William and say, "Are you a fighter? The kind that can use all your strength?" "Ah, I'm a ranger." William took out his legendary bow and arrow and showed off. The Frost Giant expressionlessly frowned. Another Frost Giant said in a muffled voice, "He's a liar. A ranger's fist isn't that strong." "No, I'm a ranger, and I can hear what you're saying." "All right, you've given me a new understanding of a ranger." The leader of the Frost Giants looked at William's left fist. Then he said to the Snow Elves, "Seal this big guy in ice. We'll bring him back to our home." "Okay, we don't know what happened to him. If we can't cure him, please ask them to look for us in the Frost Forest." The Snow Elves nodded. Obviously, they had discovered the problem with the behemoth. They tried to stop it, but it was not solved. "In that case, Prince William, please follow me." The female mage smiled and looked at William. She extended her hand and invited him to follow her. William smiled back. He held Annie's hand and followed her to the world of the Snow Elves. Chapter 361. The snowy scenery in the Frost Forest was beautiful. As they got closer to the Snow Elves' residence, they discovered that the surrounding trees seemed to have been repaired. There were cedars on the branches and leaves, as well as artistic ice sculptures. Some elves circled around them. There were all kinds of tree houses, igloos, ice towers, and all kinds of tools that could be made from ice. The streets were also covered in ice. However, the lines were very complicated and had a very good anti-skid effect. The elves here did not have tree vines to borrow, but the hard ice-field snow trees were still very good materials. They were like bridges in the air, enough for the elves to walk over easily. There were all kinds of snowmen. Some naughty elven children were having a snowball fight. Or there were some elves who looked very old, but still had a childlike innocence, doing figure skiing, just like that. This beautiful world of ice and snow slowly lifted the veil on their bodies, revealing a different kind of charm. The arrival of William and the others attracted the attention of many snow elves. However, they would not gather at the side to gossip. They just looked at each other curiously, secretly thinking about something. After all, even though they were snow elves living in the extreme north, they were still noble and elegant pure-blooded elves. This kind of politeness was almost innate. Snow elves often had long snow-white hair, blue pupils, and a high-nosed bridge, which helped them breathe more oxygen. Their skin wasn't too white under the direct sunlight, but it didn't lose its beauty. However, their bodies were bigger than other pure-blooded elves, because in the extreme north, a strong body meant that it was easier for them to survive. After all, no matter how abundant the food in this place was, it was still much worse than the living environment of the Blackleaf Elves and the Moonlight Elves. They also faced more enemies. The Orc Empire in the north was one of the dangers for the Snow Elves. In this huge and dense frost forest, there were many animals, magical beasts, and even giant frost dragons hiding on the snowy mountains. Tens of millions of orcs built steel cities in the northern mountains. They could fish in the ice fields further north. However, fish would always get tired of them. Every year, they would come down to steal food and provisions and hunt some magical beasts and animals to satisfy the appetite of some powerful orcs. This also caused the snow elves to be the elven race that fought the most in the legendary continent. But similarly, the snow elves were also the ones with the strongest battle experience, battle style, and battle willpower among the three elves. The Blackleaf elves and the Moonlight elves were just a joke in front of the snow elves. The snow elves in the Frost Forest would even join forces with the human army of the Northern Region Grand Duchy from time to time. Not to fight for territory. He wanted to control the population of the Orc Empire. It could almost be said, only in the extreme north could pure-blooded elves and humans fight side by side. I didn't expect you to be Princess Annie. I remember you came here when you were young, but I didn't see you with the Elven King. The one who had just spoken was the female magician named Alana. Annie smiled politely and said, "Back then, I was still immature and pestered my father to come along. In the end, I wore a princess dress and was so cold that I hid in a treehouse. For the next few days, he was admiring the snowy scenery outside through the window. Of course, he wasn't by father's side. Alana was smart enough not to mention that the old elf king had returned to the world tree. She also did not mention the current situation of the Moonlight elves. However, Alana was a very talkative snow elf. She seemed to have a tendency to be a diplomat. She found many topics that Annie liked. The two women chatted with each other. William and the other men slowly followed them. They looked at the surrounding scenery as they walked in. Without a doubt, as their vision became wider, there were more and more tall tree houses. This was also a city without city walls. It was very big, very big. It was much bigger than the Blackleaf Elven Kingdom. Nearly 10 million snow elves all lived together. After a full hour, William saw an ice-filled snow tree that was more than 2,000 meters tall. Its branches were luxuriant, and its snow-white crystalline leaves covered the sky. This tree was the ancestor of all the trees in the Frost Forest. It was also the guardian tree of the snow elves. At the end of the Second Era, after the World Tree was destroyed, the major elven clans divided up the remaining ancient trees. They chose some places and transplanted them into the forest where they would live in the future. William vaguely knew some of the abilities of these trees. First, psychic. In other words, these guardian god trees were intelligent, and they were not simply living there. Second, they were very powerful, although they could not compare to sages. But William knew that the Blackleaf Elves Black Iron Tree had the combat power of a legendary professional. It was a pity that these trees could not uproot themselves from the ground to run and fight. It was not that there were no tree people in this world, but there were no tree people in the legendary continent. The elves of other continents had many tree people. At this moment, William suddenly thought of the sapling of the World Tree. If there were no accidents, the sapling of the World Tree would be guarded by many tree people. When do we go there? No, let's talk about how to guard the sapling of the World Tree. William let out a long sigh. He had the treasure, but he didn't have the ability to protect it. This was a very awkward situation. Let's put it this way. Without the protection of sages, the sapling of the World Tree would definitely be snatched away. Give it to the Blackleaf Elven King. The corners of William's mouth twitched. The World Tree was more like a multi-purpose artifact to William, who had the player interface. The value of the life potion was immeasurable, let alone the other effects. The most important one was the World Tree, the World Tree that gave birth to elves. It was also called the Mother World Tree by the elves. That was right. The elves were born from the World Tree. If William had this tree, as long as he had enough time, batches of first-generation elves would be born. He continued to daydream. They came before the Snow Elf Guardian Tree. Alana pointed at the guard at the door to William. The prince lowered his head slightly and said bluntly, "William Blackleaf is here to visit the King of Frost on the King's orders. Your Highness, please wait for a moment. I will inform the Frost King immediately, but I don't know when the king will be free. Please take a rest in the living room." The Snow Elf Guard was very polite. He made a gesture, and someone took Alana's place and invited William and his companions to enter. They stepped into the Snow Elf Guard. It was as if they had entered another world. There was a barrier that isolated the temperature from the outside and inside. William and his companions were drinking hot tea in the living room. Burned cinders sighed in his heart. Along the way, I realized that the world was too small. Just now, in this city of ice and snow, I saw many snow elves who were strolling, skiing, and even had snowball fights with the children. They were many times stronger than me. I cannot even feel how strong they were. Yes, the city of Dawn is still too small, and the foundation is too weak. But Prince William, you can work hard. Didn't you poach 200,000 Blackleaf elves recently? Old Leather shrugged and said. The corners of William's mouth twitched. Why did Old Leather's words sound so unpleasant? What did he mean by poach? Did he look like a person who would poach people? But then again, could the snow elves poach a batch of Blackleaf elves? William scratched his head. It was not very realistic. The Moonlight elves could poach many people because of Annie. William had nothing to do with the Snow elves. His goal was to hand the box to the Frost King and the Snow Elf King. While he was thinking, a personal guard of the Elven King came and invited William to visit the Elven King. Snow Elf King, Ice King, Ice King. This powerful Elf King had many honorifics. Among them, the most resounding name was the King of the Extreme North. This was a respectful title recognized by both elves and humans. At the same time, he was the only saint among the Elven Kings apart from Cronus. He was a powerful ice and water dual elemental warlock saint. William entered a hall that was filled with magic lamps. When he saw a pair of snow-white legs, he immediately bowed and said in a deep voice, "Greetings, Queen. Dispense with the formalities." The Queen's voice was cold and indifferent, but it had an inviolable meaning. William raised his head and looked at the Elven Queen. The first thing he saw was her pair of long and slender legs, which were faintly discernible under her long white dress, and a pair of full breasts. What was even more gratifying was that the Elf Queen was also very good-looking. Moreover, there was a formless dignity about her that made him not dare to look directly at her face. However, following the ding-dong sound, hint, Bernice Frost's affection toward you increased by 90 points. At that moment, in the cold conference hall, it was as if spring had arrived and the flowers had bloomed. Queen Bernice's smile seemed to have widened as well. However, William didn't have any misunderstandings just because Bernice had a good impression of him. This female elven queen had a husband, and he was a legendary snow elf warrior. Although Bernice's suitors could form a line from the Frost Forest to the Blackleaf Forest, she had never been involved in any scandals. Her reputation was very good. "I heard that you have a box for me. Hand it over." The cold voice sounded again. William lowered his head and walked forward. He handed the box over personally. The Ice Queen used magic to remove the seal and opened the box in front of William. In an instant, a dazzling green light illuminated the entire hall. William could not help but take another look. It was a piece of paper made from the leaves of the World Tree. There were a few large words written in Elven writing on it. The Elven Covenant. William was stunned. What did it mean? Was the Blackleaf Elven King going to war? With whom? He did not have this memory in his previous life. When Bernice saw the covenant, she could not help but raise her eyebrows. She looked at William with her light blue eyes and asked, "Do you know how to fight?" It's enough that you know how to use weapons." "What does the Queen mean?" Bernice, the Ice Queen, did not explain. She slowly stood up and said in a deep voice, "From tomorrow onwards, all the pure-blooded elves on the legendary continent will prepare for war. We will open the teleportation portals and form an alliance to attack and defend against the Dark World. The first thing we have to do is to kill all their servants. Kill all the orcs and devils on the legendary continent." William swallowed his saliva. He thought of a war that had nothing to do with the players. A war. A war started by the pure-blooded elves. A war. A war to destroy the Orc Empire in the extreme north. A war. A war without the support of the Frost Empire. The 10 years of bloody battle. As it was too far from the beginner's village, not many players participated in the war. William raised his eyebrows. If the Grand Duchy of the Northern Region had not been destroyed, the Frost Empire would have participated in the war. If that was the case, the situation would be very different. Chapter 362. Ding Dong. Prompt. You have received an SS+ level mission, Elven Covenant. Elven Covenant. The three elven clans of the legendary continent signed an agreement at the end of the Second Era. When the Fourth Era begins, they will advance and retreat together as an alliance to fight for the right to speak in the Gods' continent. First clause of the Covenant. 10 years of blood war. Mission details. The elven sages of the Second Era had predicted that after their clansmen settled down, the population would continue to increase. The number of professionals of various levels would also increase. But a warrior without courage would never be a powerful warrior. Only war. Only then could the professionals become more powerful. Only war. Only then could the clansmen become more cohesive. Only war. Only then could the elves carve out a path of blood and stand at the peak of the Gods' continent. Mission level. SS+. Mission objective. Destroy the Orc Empire in the far north of the legendary continent and prove the rise of the pure-blooded elves. Mission time limit. 10 years. Mission reward. Unknown. Faction exchange list, not activated. Faction recruitment list, not activated. When William saw these missions, he immediately cursed in his heart. An SS+ level war mission. This kind of mission is considered a super main storyline that will change the plot of the continent. William did not expect that the box that he had sent would contain the key to activate this mission. But in my previous life, I did not participate in this mission. Even the Elven players did not participate in this super main storyline mission because it was too far away and the duration was too long. In addition, there were no famous players or NPCs who vigorously promoted this mission. Hence, very few players participated in this mission. Even if they participated, they did not persist until the end. William took a deep breath. He had to calm down and carefully think about the mission related to the 10 years of blood war. Yes, it seems that the elves won. That's right. If the three pure-blooded elven clans couldn't even defeat the Orc Empire, it would be tragic. Why would they want to be the ruler of the continent? It would be better to go back to the northeast and play in the mud. But the high-level combatants did not suffer too many losses. But many low-level combatants died in battle. William thought for a while and recalled many things. In fact, he did not know what had happened. As his level increased, his memories of his previous life became clearer, and his thoughts became more active. And after the three pure-blooded elven clans fought for 10 years, the combat power, willpower, and cohesion of their legions had basically returned to the peak of the Second Era. The only pity was the three pure-blooded elves were only an alliance, not a 3-in-1 alliance. The future pure-blooded elves are far from being a match for the human empires at their peak and the powerful winged race that has already risen. William couldn't help but sigh as he thought of this. There was no other way. Ever since the end of the Second Era, the scattered elves had never reunited. Because no matter which pure-blooded elf king it was, all of them had great ambitions and did not want to be under others. But then again, what if the Elven King had the World Tree? Even if he couldn't unify all the elves in the Gods' continent, it shouldn't be too difficult for him to unify the elves in the legendary continent, right? William's heart thumped wildly when he thought of this. He was right. The World Tree was the pure-blood elves' greatest appeal. The World Tree was equivalent to the ancient emperor's imperial sword, imperial edict, and even the emperor's personal arrival on the battlefield. That was like giving the pure-blooded elves a ton of adrenaline. The attraction was simply too great. William thought of many things in a few seconds, but not too much time had passed. Bernice Frost saw that his eyes were gradually regaining their luster. She said, "Go and make preparations. From tomorrow onwards, the Moonlight Elves and Blackleaf Elves legions will gradually move here. And this war will officially start in 3 months. Oh yes, you seem to have many chosen ones who won't die. Yes, they're my mercenaries. They are mercenaries. As long as you give them money, they are willing to die many times." William's eyes lit up as he hurriedly replied. The pure-blooded elves' war was to fight for the right to speak in status in the Fourth Era. The Elven Kings would not pay much attention to the chosen ones who had very low combat power. After all, the player's performance was not too outstanding. They could only mingle in the southeastern region or small places in the southern region. They could not even enter the camp of the human kingdoms, let alone the current elven kingdom. It had to be known. The most powerful human in the human kingdoms was often a legendary expert, but the most powerful human in the elven kingdom was a sage, and there were even more than one sage. The only thing that restricted the three major elves from being a kingdom was the problem of population. If the three elves united to form an elven empire, the elves would definitely gain a foothold in the prosperous areas of the legendary continent. But Prince William was quite famous. The fact that he had an undead legion was enough to attract a lot of attention. Bernice nodded thoughtfully. Actually, I have been to the southern region and secretly observed the Chosen Ones. They are very interesting. There are all kinds of races, but they have different connections and connections. They disappear at the same time and appear at the same time. They also speak in a dialect that we do not understand. But when the war starts in 3 months, you can bring them over. After all, the undead can do many things. The first 10-year war in the Covenant is to let the younger generation of elves be filled with courage and fighting spirit. It is not to let them die in vain. Originally, I did not want to bother with the Chosen Ones, but the number of undead legions under you is increasing. It is worth making use of them. I understand. Leave the suicide missions to the Chosen Ones and the regular legion battles to us elves. I know this very well. William laughed, and threw an expression that showed that he was on the same side. Bernice's impression of William improved. After all, Bernice had studied the Chosen Ones. She knew that the Chosen Ones had the number of deaths, but if they died too many times, they would flee. They would be filled with resentment, and their combat power would plummet. William was a half-elf, but he was willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good of the elves. Even the undead legion under him could be sacrificed, and their combat power would plummet. What did this mean? William, a half-elf, had the heart of a pure-blooded elf. Very good. He was a good citizen. He was worthy of praise and admiration. Bernice patted William's head and said kindly, "Although you are temporarily using benefits to control these Chosen Ones, you have to be careful. Don't let them escape your control." "Thank you for your guidance, Queen. William will remember it." Bernice looked at William with a gratified expression. She seemed to think that he had become a mature elf, so she nodded and said, "Go ahead. Go back and prepare, or walk around the extreme north. No one will care if you kill a white dragon. After all, the legendary dragon race experts rarely live in the northern region. No one will care about the lives of the white dragons." "Yes, Queen. William will go back now." Without a doubt. The first mission of the Alliance Agreement was the 10-year Blood War. It would bring great benefits to William. Similarly, to the players, this was a super main storyline mission. It would bring them great benefits. Suicide? William wanted to apologize to the others. No one knew the Chosen Ones better than him in this world. As long as the rewards were sufficient, they could even sell their butts, let alone suicide. Ahem. Of course, William was not talking about himself. It was about the other shameless players. After all, William was not that kind of person. Since he had been reborn, many years had passed. Time was enough to prove everything. He had seen all kinds of storms and all kinds of small temptations. However, he had always regarded all women as beautiful skeletons. No matter how seductive those girls' bodies were, no matter how beautiful those mysterious panting sounds were, no matter how pleasant they were to the ears. But the city lord was still calm. His heart was as steady as a rock. He was like a holy monk. Even when he touched other people's thighs, it was to freeload in the guest hall. When William saw Burned Cinder and the others, he glanced at the boorish Olaf. Olaf walked out of the room sensibly and admired the snowy scenery by himself. Subsequently, he told them about the Elven Alliance Agreement. There was no hesitation. The people in front of him would not betray him. After they knew about the mission, their expressions changed. Everyone's expressions changed drastically. Each of them had their own thoughts, and no one knew what they were thinking about. Annie didn't say anything. She didn't seem to be surprised by this, or rather, she already knew about it. If not, she understood why the 3 elf kings were so determined. As for returning to Moonlight Island, it was obviously not something the current elf race could do. The great elder of the Moonlight Elves was powerful, but he had watched Kronos occupy Moonlight Island. The Moonlight Elves were waiting for the sages of the younger generation to take back Moonlight Island. Burn Cinder pondered for a while and asked, "Prince William, have you made up your mind to participate in this war?" William nodded and said, "Of course, not only because of my identity, but also because of the Queen's order for the Chosen Ones to complete some suicidal missions. After settling the issue in Emerald Grand Duchy, I'll bring the Dawn Army and the Mercenary Legion here to participate in the war. The Golden Age War." Old Leather clenched his fists excitedly. Then he looked at William and said, "My lord, I'll follow you to the battlefield. I'll follow you wherever you go." William's lips twitched expressionlessly. Couldn't you find someone with lower luck points to follow you? Could he experience the benefits of having 3 luck points? After all, the curse of the goddess of bad luck had reached its limit. The curse of the Sword of Hegni had also been removed by Moses. His luck points had been restored to the maximum. 3. Old Leather wanted him to have 1 luck points. Come to think of it, what's the difference between 3 and 1? I still can't figure it out. William scratched his head and ignored Old Leather. Where should we go next? Go home. Legolas asked. Wait, let's find a white dragon and kill it. I haven't eaten dragon meat for a long time. William waved his hand and led the dragon slaying team to look for a dragon. It cannot be helped. Everyone said that the white dragons were weak. If they did not kill a dragon, they would be letting down William's title as a dragon slayer. Chapter 363. Where could he find the white dragons? He had to ask the local elves. William brought the dragon-slaying team to the streets and asked around for a while. When these snow elves heard that he was the prince of the Blackleaf Elves and knew that he wanted to slay dragons, there was nothing to hide. Soon, he collected 6 locations where white dragons appeared. It cannot be helped. He was handsome and had a high status. These intelligence information that seemed difficult for the players to collect was not difficult for him at all. He did not need to give extra gifts, brush his face every day, and all kinds of flattery. He only needed to stand on the street. Many secrets to the players were like daily conversations to him. So, things like reputation, identity, and status were definitely very useful. Especially in the extreme north, there were simply too many white dragons. They were a group of lazy eaters and would even hunt the magical beasts raised by the elves, so this group of fellows was very unpopular. In addition, this group of giant dragons liked to live in cold areas, so they basically gathered in the extreme north. They were usually solitary animals. As long as the speed of slaying the dragon was fast enough, they would not attract the attention of the powerful adult white dragons. There are 6 locations. 4 of them are too far away. They're on the icebergs in the extreme north. There are also behemoths and frost giants there. It is a little dangerous, so we will not go. But there are 2 in the frost forest. Which one should we go? William did not like this kind of multiple choice question, so he handed it over to Annie. The little princess blinked her big eyes. She pointed to the east and said, "Let's go to the place with the ice lake. Didn't the people here say that the ice lake often has frost dragons? Let's see if we can find some traces." That's good too. The ice lake on the east side of the frost forest has a very large surface area. Many magical beasts will go there to shave ice and drink water. And according to the hunter's introduction, this white dragon might appear in the near future. William nodded and took out a large heavy crossbow from his space ring. Whether it was the crossbow itself or the 3 sharp heavy arrows, they were all engraved with magic runes. The tail was also connected to a slender chain. When everyone saw it, they knew that Prince William was prepared. The heavy crossbows used to slay dragons were ready. William laughed mischievously. "Olaf, Legolas, I'll leave the heavy crossbow to you. Olaf is in charge of pulling the crossbow, while Legolas is in charge of aiming. Enchant 3 high-quality arrows. Don't waste them." The 2 of them nodded, indicating that this was not a problem. His Royal Highness also believed in Legolas, a godly archer who never missed his target. After all, this heavy crossbow was really a legendary, super heavy crossbow that he had specially made to slay dragons. 3 of the arrows were also legendary grade heavy arrows that had a series of effects such as magic penetration, defense penetration, bleeding, and penetration. The chains were used to limit the speed of the dragon's flight or escape. Let me put it this way. With these two together, even if it was a young dragon or a grandmaster dragon, as long as a part of its body was hit, it could instantly take away 50,000 to 100,000 HP and cause a series of negative effects. As for cannons, I'm really sorry. These cannons were very harmful to buildings and humans. But because the cannons were round and had no penetrating ability, they were useless against the dragons that were covered with hard scales. In particular, the cannons and magic cannons were too cumbersome and covered a large area. They were also a threat to the professionals that fought with the dragons in close combat. So they were basically not used to slay dragons. It was more suitable to defend against dragons attacking cities. William had slain dragons before, but did not mean that he would let his guard down against the dragon race. Even the white dragons had the most legendary bloodline, not to mention their ridiculous health points. If it was a one-on-one fight, right now, William wasn't sure if he could win. As for the other weapons used to slay dragons, William did not need them. After all, he had seen movies where many powerful people used a spear and a sword to slay dragons. He was already very prepared. They flew all the way to the frozen lake that was more than 500 kilometers east. Time passed quickly. In just 2 hours, they arrived at the frozen lake. They did not rashly enter the frozen lake, which had a large area. Because this place had left the territory of the snow elves, there were many magical beasts nearby. The appearance of humans would definitely alarm the magical beasts. William looked up and saw a few cumbersome giant frost bears madly hammering the ice surface with their claws. After breaking the ice surface, they plunged into the cold lake water. Not long after, pom pom pom, there were several consecutive loud sounds. Numerous water pillars shot into the sky. Many freshwater fish were blasted to the ice surface by the giant frost bears using their endowment magic. Subsequently, a few big fellows crawled out of the lake. They held the fish in their mouths or used their sharp claws to pierce through the big fish. Then, they turned around and ran away. They seemed to know that the area around the frozen lake was not safe. Even though they were at the top of the food chain, they were still the prey of many big monsters. When the snow foxes and wolves saw the giant frost bears leaving, they carefully moved closer and started to lick the cold lake water. It was a good food chain. Fish ate shrimp. Shrimp ate microorganisms. Bears ate fish. Other animals would also drink from the ice surface. Even if the giant frost bears were too lazy to come, snow foxes and wolves could also eat snow to replenish their body fluids. Most of the animals and magical beasts here had a natural protective color, which was white. If one wanted to hunt them, one had to have good eyesight. Are we just going to wait? Olaf could not help but ask. If they had the time to kill a bear, it would be good to eat some meat. When the time came, they could wear the bear's skin and slay the dragon. The corners of William's mouth twitched. He did not want to wait, but he did not know when the giant frost dragon would come. But he still had to be patient. He gestured for them to calm down. Everyone squatted down and hid in the snow. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. The prince suddenly stood up and said, "We can't wait any longer. It's been too long." Everyone spread out and looked for dragon footprints. Maybe the white dragon lives nearby. But at this moment, the roars of the animals in the forest could be heard. Tremors could be felt coming from the ground. A gigantic white dragon that was dozens of meters long suddenly soared into the sky from the nearby forest. The dragon's scales on the surface of its body reflected light like mirrors, and its dragon wings covered the sky. It didn't even need to flap its wings to fly at an extremely fast speed. Its 2 dragon claws were still holding onto 2 of the frozen giant frost bears. Bang, bang. 2 loud sounds were heard. The giant frost bears that had escaped after catching the fish were thrown heavily onto the ice surface. Ice shards splashed everywhere, but the ice on their bodies did not shatter. They were like lifelike ice sculptures that stood upright on the ice surface. It was obvious. They had been frozen by the white dragon's breath. William did not know if they were dead or not, but they must be in a bad mood. But William had personally witnessed the white dragon's hobby of eating frozen food. After the giant frost dragon landed on the ice surface, its huge head which was full of sharp edges, turned around. It used its pair of golden eyes that would never be extinguished to check the surroundings for potential threats. Fortunately, the dragon race was naturally arrogant, even though there were often rumors of giant dragons being killed. But if one were to calculate, the giant dragon had killed more people. Hence, the giant dragon did not investigate further. She glanced at the ice surface that had been smashed by the giant bears. She stretched her head and sniffed. Then, with a splash, she dived into the lake. It seemed like she was going to start a new round of feeding. TSK. The frozen lake gave William a feeling. It was like a beautiful lady who welcomed guests. She was very popular, and anyone who came would want to occupy her. Old Leather hid his entire body under the snow. He only revealed his eyes and asked, including the tail, "It's more than 30 meters long? Is it still a young dragon?" The prince, who had just stood up and quickly dove into the pile of snow, had already used his insight. Giant frost dragon, legendary. Position level, young grandmaster, level 135, endowment. Frost breath, dragon's breath, endowment. Dragon's roar, dragon's breath, endowment. White dragon's bite, health, 735,400, endurance, 341,500. Anyway, there was a lot of data. William glanced at it and said to the others, "It's a young dragon, but it's almost an adult dragon, but it can still move. Everyone, get ready." Before reaching level 100, it was from beginner level 10 to advanced level 100. On average, there would be a level up at every 30 levels. But at level 100, the Grandmaster would level up once every 40 levels. To become a legendary professional, one had to be at least level 180. Not only were the class advancement quests extremely difficult, but everyone's class advancement quests were also different. It could be said, if it was difficult for a player to become a Grandmaster, they could grit their teeth and complete the mission tens of times. Then they would be able to pass. But they still wanted to advance to epic and legendary. The difficulty of the mission would be sky high. In such a situation, there were only two choices for the players. First, they could go for the level up mission. Even if they had to borrow equipment from rich players, they could complete the level up mission. In the later stages of the game, borrowing equipment to level up had become an industry second. If they gave up on the level up mission, they would never be able to level up again. But this wasn't all bad, because even if the players did not level up, they could still continue to level up their characters. Their skills could also continue to break through the upper limit and level up. In particular, they could learn other sub-occupations. As long as they worked hard enough, even if they reached level 300, they could still learn many sub-occupations. By then, even if they were still a Grandmaster, their attributes would still be very powerful. They would be much weaker than the epic players. William had said this before. Many NPCs who could not break through the upper limit would continue to level up. That would allow their physical fitness to continue to improve. For example, the elves. If he only had a high-grade bloodline, then that should be his upper limit. But the elves had long lives. Even if they could not increase their level, they could continue to level up. This meant that their physical fitness would continue to improve. It was the same logic as the players. And this situation would happen more and more in the later stages of the game, because as long as they could survive long enough, it was very likely that an old man at the epic rank could also fight against a legendary big shot. What do we do now? Wait for it to come out. Don't. How long do we have to wait for it? I'll go to the ice surface to steal its frozen bear. I don't believe that the white dragon can tolerate its food being stolen. Legolas, prepare the crossbow. If the white dragon attacks me, shoot it immediately. The corners of William's mouth curled up. The silly white dragon liked to sneak attack its prey from the water, snow, or high altitude. But His Royal Highness was least afraid of this. He had no choice. He had thick skin. Although his health points were 7 to 8 times lower than the giant frost dragons, he was still a legendary boss. Even if the white dragon thought that his appearance was a trap, William would roast and eat the frozen bear in front of the white dragon. He did not believe that the white dragon would not attack. Chapter 364. As a dragon, Achilles had a cave and a lake at home. He lived a happy life. Every day, he ate, slept, and ate. When he was free, He would grab large stones and throw them at the frost giants. Otherwise, he would go to the human countries, the Orc Empire, or even the elves that passed by. He would catch and eat them as snacks. When he was busy, he would be chased by the Behemoth and the Dragon Slayer team for hundreds of kilometers. In short, Achilles, who did not abstain from eating, lived a happy life. Until now, no one had found out where his nest was. Some people even knew that he often appeared near this ice lake. But no Dragon Slayer team was waiting for him. Until he came to his large pond to fish. He was eating happily when he realized that a human wanted to steal the food he had just frozen. Achilles was furious. He did not say anything about the two stupid bears that had just stolen the fish. They had too much water in their heads and were definitely stupid. But could it be that the human in front of him was also stupid? Did he not know that the two frozen bears were his food? And not only did he steal the food, even now, he suspected that he wanted to steal the ice formed by his dragon breath. Now that I think about it, this person has committed a heinous crime. The dragon and the god are indignant. The dragon and the god should kill him. Achilles lay at the bottom of the lake. He realized that William was about to move the ice away. He could not help but have some thoughts. He wanted to rush up and swallow that person. But he thought about it and decided to take a look first. What if this seemingly harmless person was a dragon slayer? But Achilles did not expect this. That human seemed to feel that it was too troublesome to carry, so he ran away in a flash. Achilles regretted it. He regretted swallowing that person, just as he was about to climb out of the water to take a look. But a figure appeared near the ice again. He took a pile of dry wood and started a fire. He lit it up. It seemed that he wanted to melt the ice of the giant bear. The frost dragon was expressionless. His thoughts were in a mess. He wanted to say that ordinary fire could not destroy the ice that he had formed. Perhaps the ice of the giant bear would not melt. If the ice below melted, he would fall with the ice of the giant bear. But this bastard was roasting his food on the ice. Wasn't that a little too much? Were they looking down on dragons? What's wrong? Are we frost dragons that weak? Did he embarrass the dragon race? Thinking of this, Achilles silently crossed out the first two sentences, but I don't care anymore. The bear can endure it, but the dragon can't. Bite him. Achilles slowly floated up from the bottom of the lake, not moving at all. Like a crocodile in a bathtub, she had already become a mature little hunter. Moreover, the ice surface of the extreme north was very thick. If he didn't take the initiative to release his aura, ordinary people wouldn't be able to detect him. Slowly, Achilles gradually came to the bottom of the ice layer where William was standing. The next second, a giant dragon covered in silver scales broke through the ice. The giant dragon opened its mouth full of sharp teeth and bit at William, the giant bear, and even the so-called bonfire. However, at the same time, William stepped into the void and rose from the ground, narrowly avoiding the giant dragon's bite. It had to be said, in order not to let the frost dragon know that he was guarding against it, William didn't use his soul detection. His lower body was almost swallowed by the dragon. At this moment, a green arrow shot out at the speed of lightning. Accompanied by thunderous sounds, it hit the dragon's head. Bang! The arrow flew over. Dragon scales splattered and blood splattered. The frost dragon's head smashed heavily on the ice surface. Achilles was severely injured, but he was also angry. He was so angry that he almost went crazy. He dashed out of the water and frantically shook his head. Olaf and Legolas, who were holding onto the chains of the heavy arrows, didn't even have the chance to shoot again. They were flung out of the water. Fortunately, there was a huge, ancient tree not far in front of them that entangled the chains. Otherwise, they would have been flung onto the ice surface. Gosh, he's so fierce. His head was hit by an arrow, but he only caused 80,000 damage. William gulped. The white dragon wasn't that weak. He didn't hesitate in midair. He pulled out the sword of Hex and slashed down with a thunder slash. Hundreds of meters of sword energy slashed down. Within a radius of a few hundred meters, there were electric arcs and lightning that struck down from the sky. Such a slash. It ruthlessly slashed the head of the frost dragon, who was about to soar into the sky. There was a loud explosion. The frost dragon, who was about to soar into the sky, crashed onto the ice surface again, creating spiderweb-like marks. Trying to fly? No way. William was about to swing his sword for the second time. An icy breath came at him. William felt the extreme chill. He used 9 consecutive slashes, and his battle energy shield appeared at the same time. But even so, the low temperature of the dragon's breath still caused him to suffer more than 9,000 damage points. The surface of his body was affected by the frostbite debuff, and his health points continued to drop for a full minute. But no one would believe it. The frost dragon was even more shocked. William didn't even use any defensive skills. He only used his battle energy slashes and battle energy shield to withstand the frost dragon's icy breath. This elf was insane. At this moment, Annie, Burn Cinder, and Old Leather rushed over. The three of them didn't dare to show off in front of the frost dragon. They used their ultimate skills at the same time. Annie's moonlight sword was like a full moon that had fallen to the heavens and the earth. It slashed across the frost WYRM's body and tore open a bloody wound. Burn Cinder held the magma-like Dragon Slayer saber in his hand. He leaped up and slashed at the back of the frost dragon. But at the same time, the frost dragon flapped its wings frantically once again. Countless ice and frost swirled around its body like a tornado, forcefully blocking Burn Cinder's blade. However, Old Leather had arrived. Almost no one saw how he charged into the frost tornado, but he just strolled leisurely, avoiding the ice shards one after another, directly arriving in front of the frost dragon, and fiercely stabbing the longsword in his hand at the dragon's chest. Roar! When the evil dragon roared, the violent sound waves were like air waves, sending everyone flying in all directions. The frost dragon was very angry. He had been tricked. The heavy arrow on his head was wrapped in chains, and he couldn't shake it off no matter how hard he tried. This affected his beautiful moves, and he couldn't show off even if he wanted to. Hence, he was even angrier. He hadn't been chased by the dragon-slaying team for many years. Today, he and Achilles would fight to the death. However, a mere dragon roar was nothing to him. Everyone rushed forward again, and soon, a new round of damage was inflicted on him. However, no matter how weak the frost dragon was, he had some tricks up his sleeves. His frost breath seemed to be endless, and coupled with the high damage of the dragon breath, he caused a lot of trouble for everyone. As a result, the ice layer that had already exploded once again formed an even sturdier ice surface. Gradually, as time passed, when Achilles stopped his frost breath, his golden eyes suddenly lit up, and he roared again. In an instant, the ice within a radius of a few thousand meters shattered, and the temperature dropped to negative hundreds of degrees Celsius. Everyone's vision turned white. Pseudo-forbidden spell. Everyone shivered. In such a low temperature, even if they used their battle energy shields, they wouldn't be able to last long. They also discovered that their movement speed, attack speed, and defense were decreasing. William didn't dare to delay any longer. The frost dragon had obviously used a super skill that depleted his potential. He didn't know how long this pseudo-forbidden spell could last. But in this state that was similar to the cold ice domain, if they dragged on, they would definitely die. Hence, the power of the Saint Spirit was enhanced. The thunder body of the Thunder equipment set was enhanced. The Holy Thunder incarnation appeared at the same time. At this moment, he was like the thunder god that had descended. His body was surrounded by sparkling lightning and thunder. Right now, William was in his strongest state. It could be said that, within a short distance, everyone could rival a nation. This was the description of someone like him. In the next second, a bolt of lightning flashed in the Frost Realm. The Frost Dragon opened his huge golden eyes and suddenly spat out a dragon breath that was hundreds of meters long. He wanted to stop William's attack. However, William, who was in the state of the Thunder incarnation, could dodge most of the damage and control skills. William, who was dashing in the Frost Dragon's breath, ignored the ice and wind. In just 2 breaths, he arrived in front of the Frost Dragon. The dragon's claws slashed down. Cold light flashed. William lowered his head and dodged. Then, he slashed his sword upward. It was a thunder strike. Use all the thunder power in your body to deal 10,000 plus Thunder attribute, attack X 500%. Thunder attribute damage to the enemy. Consumption, none cooldown, 12-hour side effect. In the next hour, your Thunder endowment will lose all effects. But it was such a move. It hit the Frost Dragon's chin, causing more than 50,000 points of damage. The bolts of lightning covered the Frost Dragon's entire body, causing him to be paralyzed for a short period of time. In this short period of time, Old Leather, Burn Cinder, and Annie attacked with all their might. Each of them had a powerful attack, and they attacked the Frost Dragon like it was free. 3 seconds later, the Frost Dragon came back to his senses. He was in a daze. Just as he was regretting his actions and was about to escape from this place, the ice under William's feet suddenly exploded. He charged forward like a cannonball and engaged in close combat. The Frost Dragon came to its senses and opened its cavernous mouth again, trying to swallow him whole. But a fist that flashed with lightning landed on his nose. Bang! His flesh exploded. The Frost Dragon's head was raised several meters into the air from the impact. When Burn Cinder saw this scene, he knew that his chance had come. He gripped his dragon-slaying saber tightly. No one knew what he was thinking. Then, he leaped up. In an instant, he was above the Frost Dragon's neck. A slash. It was a slash that looked like lava. It was a slash that could unleash the Frost Realm. It was a slash that could split the surface of the frozen lake. The slash flashed. Burn Cinder stood on a piece of floating ice. There was a loud sound. The Frost Dragon's head smashed heavily onto the ice that was about to crack. At this moment, everyone looked at Burn Cinder in surprise. They were shocked. They thought that Burn Cinder had used his ultimate move. But William suddenly widened his eyes. He gulped and tilted his head to look at Burn Cinder. It was true. Faced with a dog with a human head, William wanted to find a time to talk to Burn Cinder on a dark and windy night. Then, he would kill Burn Cinder and throw his corpse under the ice. No one knew. No one knew. It was perfect. Snatching the dragon's head? This was snatching experience points and the title of Dragon Slayer. Chapter 365. This dragon-slaying battle, which wasn't too well prepared, ended quickly. It could not be helped. The giant Frost Dragon was weak, and everyone was a Grandmaster legendary boss. Only Olaf was an advanced epic boss. This team was considered a top-notch dragon-slaying team. In addition, William had the status of a sage. He could withstand the damage and unleash powerful attacks. It was impressive that the giant Frost Dragon could fight to this extent. To prevent the dragon's blood from flowing out, the prince quickly stored it in his space ring. After all, everyone knew that dragons were at the bottom of the food chain. They were the top creatures in the world of ingredients. Oh, yes. Dragons were also the top ingredient in the world of cuisine. Every part of the dragon's body was a treasure. It would be shameful to waste it. However, just as everyone was about to leave, an earth-shattering roar reverberated in all directions. Billowing air billows came from afar. At that moment, the smoke dissipated. Heavy snow swirled in the air. All the tall trees within a radius of tens of thousands of meters were blown down. Everyone was stunned. They immediately ran. Giant Frost Dragon. It was another white dragon. Based on the roar alone, it proved that this dragon was either an epic or a legendary dragon. The prince heard the thunderous roar approaching him. He stopped running. He took out 4 teleportation scrolls and threw them to the others. He and Olaf stayed behind to dig a hole and escape. After all, he had the experience of digging in the ground in front of Sage. He was very confident in his ability. But Annie also took out a few teleportation scrolls. In that case, no one had to stay here. Even Olaf could get a teleportation scroll. They did not dare to hesitate. They immediately crushed the scrolls. In the next moment, the legendary ranked Frost Dragons had already spread their wings, and a black shadow appeared above their heads. But they were decisive. With a giant Frost Dragon crashed into the ground. Their bodies distorted and entered the space tunnel. But the giant Frost Dragon continued to use violent energy to blast the surrounding space. It seemed like it wanted to pierce through space and force the people who had entered the space tunnel out. But it had to be said that the quality of the teleportation scrolls was good. The giant frost dragon's understanding of space was still lacking. Even though they felt threatened in the spatial tunnel, they immediately disappeared into the distance. In the end, the 60-meter-long frost dragon let out a hateful roar and continued to spew icy breaths in all directions. Anger. Indescribable anger. This was a female dragon. She had many children, but most of them had died at the hands of behemoths and frost giants. However, this most outstanding child who had lived the longest had still died at the hands of the dragon-slaying team. This made her feel an uncontrollable anger. She wanted revenge. She wanted revenge on the humans and elves. But no one cared about her feelings. Slaying a dragon. As long as he chose the right chromatic dragon, it would have nothing to do with justice or evil. This was because five-color dragons were born to be despicable. If it weren't for the Penishade dragon's natural inclination to find trouble with other intelligent creatures, did they really think that anyone would take the initiative to slay a dragon? In this land of the extreme north, be it behemoths, frost giants, human villages, or snow elves, all of them have been eaten by frost dragons. Could it be that the lives of dragons were valuable? The lives of creatures weaker than them were worthless? Perhaps. In the eyes of the dragons, this was the case. These were the memories and legacies that had been passed down since the first era. But times had changed. Today, humans were still at the peak of the entire continent. Dragons ate humans, and humans killed dragons. This was a matter of course. And why didn't anyone find trouble with the gem dragon or the metal dragon? The silver dragon lady was very popular in the human world. If they didn't find trouble with themselves, who else would they find trouble with if not them? Everyone experienced a thrilling but not dangerous chase. Soon, they used the random teleportation scroll and disappeared in all directions. The random teleportation scroll teleported them in a parallel direction. The distance was very far, at least tens of kilometers. At this distance, as long as they were not real sages, it would be difficult for the pursuers to find them again after they hid their aura. They were not idiots. The gathering point was naturally within the capital of the Snow Elves. As time gradually passed, Olaf was the first to arrive. This was because his teleportation scroll was the closest to the capital of the Snow Elves. Next was Burned Cinder. Subsequently, Old Leather, Annie, Legolas. Everyone gathered together and sent a transmission scroll to William. After confirming that they were safe, they waited for another half an hour. At this time, William hurried over. However, when he walked over, everyone could not help but stare in shock. Half of his body was covered in frost. It was like a martial arts practitioner who had gone berserk. They were shocked. How could they be so unlucky? They had entered the space tunnel, but they were still hit by the frost dragon. William was speechless. He did not believe that it was a problem with his luck. He felt that the teleportation scroll that he used was not given to him by Moses. It was made by Old Band. Oh, it was a test product. Otherwise, he would not have used it. He believed that he was not that unlucky. Prince William, do you want to use a drop of life potion? You're paralyzed now. Old Leather looked at William's limping walking posture and could not help but say, Your life potion was obtained by the wind. Is it free? William frowned and said, Wait here. I'll find someone to help me get rid of the frost on my body before we leave. He had no choice. This was the frost breath of a legendary great dragon. William's level was much lower than that of the frost breath. Even though he had only been hit by a small amount in the space tunnel, he had been inflicted with a negative buff that lasted for 10 hours. His health points were still dropping. In just half a day, William and his companions returned after slaying a dragon. Many snow elves could not take it anymore. Wasn't this dragon-slaying party a little too lucky? There were actually many dragon-slaying squads among the snow elves, but when they went to places where dragons appeared, they wouldn't even see the shadow of a powerful magical beast, let alone a dragon. What was a dragon-slaying team? They had to look for legendary great dragons that had a fixed lair. They could only look for young and average great dragons. But the lair of these great dragons was very hidden. The places where they appeared were usually the places where they hunted. The dragon-slaying team usually stayed in those places for a long time. Whether or not they could see the dragon and kill it was a big problem. But now, Prince William had just gone out. A few hours later, he returned with the corpse of the frost dragon. TSK. It was very enviable. However, William did not want to tell them that if their team also had two fellows with more than 500 luck points, it would not be a problem for them to encounter a normal giant dragon. It was obvious that their luck points were too high. Time passed very quickly. William did not look for the queen for help. She probably did not have time, but he was the Blackleaf Elven Prince. In particular, Prince William was handsome and cute. When he walked with a limp, he looked very pitiful. This made many female elves feel motherly love for him. It cannot be helped. Prince William was still underage. He was still a baby. One of the legendary female mages took the initiative to help Prince William solve his physical problems. Then, he asked sincerely if he needed any help. Sigh. It could not be helped. He was handsome. He was cute. How could a baby like him slay a dragon? It was unbelievable. But Prince William did not ask for anything more. He only hoped that she could open a teleportation portal so that he could avoid the risks of traveling and return home. With regards to this, the legendary big boss easily agreed. She could let him go directly to the Blackleaf Elven capital through the teleportation portal. Because after the alliance agreement was sent here, the teleportation portals of the three elven tribes had been opened. At least for a short period of time, it was impossible to close the teleportation portals. And Olaf, he stayed here temporarily. After a period of time, he would sneak back home. As for William's suggestion to join the City of Dawn, he decided to think about it again. Next, it was another thrilling teleportation experience. Everyone's body kept twisting and folding. They even had the illusion that time had stopped in the space tunnel. They traveled from the northernmost part of the legendary continent to the southernmost part. When they walked out of the teleportation portal, the five fellows and one horse almost fell to the ground. Burn Cinder sat on the ground in a daze. He felt dizzy and saw stars. After a long time, he muttered, "This is the worst experience I've ever had in traveling through a space tunnel. It's really killing me." Old Leather, on the other hand, took a few deep breaths and was the first to recover from the shock. He explained with a scientific expression, "Spatial tunnels do indeed make people feel like they have an illusion of time, especially when they travel a long distance like this. It can even cause fatal damage to normal humans, so it's normal for you to feel that way." "I see. Old Leather, what did you do in the Red Fire Kingdom in the past? You seem to be an important person." At this point, a Blackleaf Elf guard could not help but explain, "That's not the case. This spatial tunnel has only just opened, and the space is not stable yet. As long as we wait for a few more days, this dizzying situation will not happen." Old Leather glanced at Burn Cinder's strange gaze and immediately shut his mouth. He did not want to say another word. Prince William straightened his back and said to the rest, "Return to the City of Dawn. I'll report the mission to the Elven King before returning." "Understood. By the way, get Alec's intelligence department to focus on Emerald Grand Duchy and Lanyu Grand Duchy. Within 3 months, I want to capture all the vampires in these 2 Grand Duchies." "Got it." Everyone nodded. Then, they entered the teleportation portal and returned to the City of Dawn. William went to look for the Blackleaf Elven King to report the completion of the mission. He did not have to report it. He just wanted to show his face. He had decided to solve the problem of the throne of the Elven King. As an Elven Prince, he had to look for the Elven King every few days to have a heart-to-heart talk. How should he say it? The Elven King was his grandfather, right? Was it reasonable for the Elven King to take care of his grandfather's health? This was the title of a filial son. He wanted it.